That was so jolly. That was so friendly. I love it.
Ah. We do that every time. Like every guest we have on, we need to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm down.
Oh my god, that was super cute. That was so
I'm
adorable.
watching it play back now. Oh my god, you guys got the moves.
Yeah.
We do have quite.
We got the moves, and I got the freezy pops.
Yeah, he's got freezy pops, and
I fucking live on these things.
You really do. Like that's all I see you.
Water.
That's all I see you eat.
They're delicious.
Ever.
They're really
and
delicious.
onion rings. Freezy pops. A man cannot live on a diet of freezy pops and onion rings.
Ooh, can you talk for me?
No.
Why are you so quiet, bro?
I don't know. Did I get quiet all of a sudden?
Yeah, you're a little quieter than Plutz is.
Ooh, that's not good.
What volume through here?
Nobody's ever gonna hear you, bro. Like.
Mixer. No, where the fuck did it go? Stop trying so hard.
Can't help it. Try hard. That's what I should have the squeegee try hards. That's what we should have been.
Oh my.
Yep.
But
that's
my mic is like up.
There we go. That's good. That's good right there.
Ah, there you go.
Now, okay, so
all right.
This is the second episode of Nerd, which stands for never erotic. Never erotic. Help me out, Plutz. Help me out. What does nerd stand for?
Rodent dung?
There we go. Yeah.
I don't know. Those were the two words that came to, I don't know why that happened.
Never erotic rodent dung. That's the name of the
Never
show.
erotic rodent dung. Oh,
today.
Your tweets. I got a tweet.
Today, I've been pinging your fucking handle like it was cocaine all week.
Jesus, I know, right? Hold on. I gotta retweet this. I gotta retwitter this.
Random dude. Huh?
So this is the this is the talk show about role playing. This isn't the show where we actually do the role playing. We do the role playing every Saturday. Darkness Rising. It's gonna be a whole bunch of stuff coming out soon. It's starting to take over the channel like a Zerg creep. Well, I gotta run that adventure.
Ooh. Zerg creep.
New exciting roleplay discussion.
New exciting roleplay discussion.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
There you go.
Did it!
Nerd.
No narcolepsy in that one. I approve.
Nerd. I like that one. That one's good.
All right. So, in case you missed it, today's guest host is Pukajutsu.
Me! It's me!
Where'd the grill come
Fuckers,
from?
get ready for a ride of a lifetime.
Well, I was thinking to myself, you know, like, who do I know? Like, because I didn't want to have, like, like, the two realms of playing. You could be a good GM, you could be a good player, right? And as I'm a chronic GM, I am really not the person who talks about being a good player. I understand what I want to see from a player when I run a game for them, but I'm not really the world's best player. I don't have much experience doing that, right? Frank is just a player. Like, Frank is just...
Yeah, I don't have a GM/DM/ST bone in my body. But sometimes I do if it gives me extra XP.
You know, like, I happen to run a game that Plutofaerie is in, so I can verify that, like, you know, that she's a good player, and being a grill is fantastic for ratings. So
50 grill. Jury's still out.
Jury's still out. But so we're gonna cover a couple of things today. We're gonna open up primarily. We're gonna talk about table manners. How the fuck do you carry yourself at a game table? We're gonna talk about character design, because that's a huge part of being the player. Is you're the one who designs your character. So how does a good player design their character? How, what, and why? And we're gonna talk about the actual act of role playing and what good players do versus what bad players do, and how you can not fuck up. But before that, let's talk about Plutofaerie.
I don't want to talk about me.
Too bad.
No, I do. I always love to talk about me.
Too bad.
That 3 hours later.
Okay, so before so who the hell are you? What are you doing on my stream? Who are you?
I don't even know half the time.
I didn't invite you.
No,
What's going on?
I am Plutofaerie. For those of you that have seen me from the I keep calling it World of Darkness Rising stream. I used to play Tanya. She's dead now. I play Faith. And I also stream Final Fantasy 14, and I don't know why, but I hang out with Squeegee on his TeamSpeak server too. I don't know why.
I'm sorry.
Look, all I'm saying is that Plutofaerie's on my TeamSpeak server a hell of a lot more often than you are, Frank. Okay.
That's because I'm never a drag queen when I'm on your server. I want to be a drag queen.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Can I second?
Alright, but seriously, like, who are you? What do you do?
Who am I? What do I do? Currently, I am the editor-in-chief of TGN's main website, central.tgn.tv, with all sorts of gaming coverage and stuff. That is what I'm currently doing, and I also stream Final Fantasy XIV over on my channel at Plutofaerie, twitch.com/Plutofaerie. I also roleplay over the weekends too.
Twitch.tv.
What do you?
Twitch.tv.
It's Twitch.tv. Come on, Miss Editor-in-Chief. Allow me to edit.
You guys all know I'm in YouTube's pocket, right? I'm a double agent. I'm a covert spy over here. No,
You can find her over at gaming.youtube.com/Plutofaerie.
I don't even have a YouTube channel. That's the best part. Okay, but no, I also like I said, roleplay with EvilSqueegee, and I also do D&D. I have both played characters and run campaigns. So
about that.
That's a very
explain to us your long and sordid history at the table.
Longest story in history?
Long sordid history.
Long sordid history at the game table. Well, I started tabletopping, oh my god, back in high school. Because in middle school, you guys will love this. Middle school, I was all about that, like, you guys will like this, that Britney Spears and that NSYNC and the Teeny Bopper stuff. Totally one of those until I started hanging out with the kids in the back of the cafeteria and learning how to play Magic and playing D&D and Vampire and LARPing and just a whole new world, a new fantastic point of view.
I'm horribly sorry. A whole new world.
Yeah. What is it? A whole new world. Yeah.
A whole fantastic point of view.
Fantastic point of view. Yeah, like Disney chick.
Okay, so that's where you became infected with the nerd virus.
The nerd virus, and ever since then, we played all through college, had multiple adventures with multiple different characters that actually intertwined as well because, we were all hanging out with the same people in college, so you do one campaign, retire your level 20 fucking heroes because they're too powerful, and just keep running stories with them as, like, little characters and stuff. It's pretty fun.
Yep. All right.
Pretty fun.
So
red shirt, Piss is piss in the house. So I've been tabletopping for 16 years now, and I've done lots of different ones.
Not the least of which you can catch on Saturdays on this very channel at twitch.tv/EvilSqueegee.
Rulebooks here.
4 p.m.
Just sitting on my desk. My friends want me to run a campaign for the DC Adventures Heroes Handbook is why I've been given this, so they want me to run a Heroes campaign.
I'm not gonna lie, that's mildly erotic.
Yeah. I like running campaigns. I like writing stories. That's why I'm here, I think. I think that's why Squeegee asked me here. I don't know. Probably because of the boobs.
I like turtles.
I like turtles.
Look, I just like the yeah, that's why. All right, so
gamer.
we're
Super
going
hot
to
grill.
If you guys have questions in chat, can I get somebody who wants to keep track of the questions that go by in chat?
Oh, that I can. I've got chat.
Pook, well, you're gonna be doing all the talking, so you don't need to do any reading.
Okay.
Pook, you're really good at reading. You're better at reading than I am.
I can't read because I'm a woman?
So I'm not allowed to do the talking?
No. God, why would I ever let you talk, Frank?
Okay.
I gotta find somebody who's gonna be able to consistently be here to be my
Yeah, I'm looking
my chat bot,
and I see that we've got a question. All right. We got a question from Walk Zombie already. Did I see a Warhammer 40K book there because I wanted to see it?
No, I've got DC Adventures Hero Handbook and this is the 5th edition?
Yeah,
that's
5th edition. Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons Players Handbook with character sheets actually in it.
So that's
unfortunately.
That's a letdown,
right,
because they're both better than 40K.
Basically, if you just want to like grab the questions out of chat and paste them in a notepad file or whatever, so at the end of the episode,
right, yeah, no, I just figured that one wasn't like just like the books on the desk kind of. Yeah.
All right.
So what do we want to start? We want to start with table manners.
Yeah, basically, like when you start like searching, advice or guides or whatever, introductions to playing tabletop role-playing games. You know what? There's guides to everywhere you look. You can find guides to being a GM. Never mind that most of them are filled with like anecdotal, useless, difficult to understand bullshit. But that's not the point. The point is there are very, very few places where you can find advice on how to be a good player. And so that was one of the things I wanted to tackle with this episode. And the first part of being a good player is not being a rude as fuck jackdick. And so the first section is
constantly interrupting people and talking over them.
Beat! Beat! But yeah. So we can just like go right down the list.
Okay. Yeah, the biggest rule being at the table, the D-bad rule, don't be a dick. Pretty sure that's the most important one. Sorry. Oh my gosh, didn't mean to cough in everybody's ear. Usually I mute before.
How dare you?
You should have a general gist of the rules. Now, obviously, like I wonder if there's like a good middle ground to like how many rules you should know. I'd say basic rules, obviously not like you don't have to know the ins, like the complete ins and outs.
For you. You didn't know the rules.
Exactly. Yeah, World of Darkness. I didn't know the rules. I just jumped in.
Well,
but
like
later there's systems like it. So
well, in your case, like the rules were, I'm still not applying the whole system to the game. I'm still like discarding most of it. And I'm introducing rules as we go along in that game. But once the rules were explained, you knew what they were, and I invited you explicitly intending to teach you the rules as we played. Right? It's when you should know the rules and be prepared with them. I can't count the number of games that I've run that have lasted like 6 months and still players don't know what their characters are capable of. Like, they just don't. And in some cases, like the games that I play, that's mildly understandable. In Mage of the Awakening, your character's power is literally infinite. Okay, but it's reading and reading and grasping a couple pages of text is not too much to ask, because I can't count the number of times I've had to take a player's turn for them as the GM just to keep the game flowing, and like I should not have to take your turn for you. You should. It's fine if you don't know the finer nuances of the rules, but you should be able to know the rules so that when I tell you to do something, you know how to do it, and you have an idea of what it is that the rules will be used to interpret what your action is, so that you know what is possible.
Yeah.
Right? Basically, you should know enough to be able to present your own ideas for what your character is doing in the situation.
Yep.
It's not often the question of, are there rules for me to do this? It should more be like, can I do this?
Oh, yeah, like, God, I much prefer players to state actions, not skills.
Right.
Right?
Right. Like, I choose the combat strip.
Yeah.
Where I also think that, you should invest a little bit in learning the rules, but I also don't think you should invest enough where you're learning the rules to
BOP.
Right. But
no, it is fun.
But it's you should learn the rules to pertain to your character.
How many sessions have you played? Your DM was talking with his mouth full. How many sessions have you played that have fallen apart or ground to a halt because the wizard had to flip through his fucking book to know what his spell did?
I still have to do that as a
dude.
I'm sorry.
That's literally. Oh man.
Yeah, that's actually like 98% of my game time is me spent flipping through, going, okay, what exactly does this thing do?
That's my husband. Playing the mages, flipping through the spell book.
Yeah, right, and there's nothing wrong with flipping through the spell book, but
I tried to work it into actual role play now of just like and then I'm casting, but like that sort of thing.
But like not knowing those rules, if you're not careful, you'll wind up wasting everybody's time.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not cool. Like you want to be the player who really shows up and contributes. You want to be contributing, not researching how to contribute at the table.
Right. Yeah. I have a general idea of what the spells do now because I've actually read them so many times.
And having a general idea will allow you to be adaptable. I'm thinking of a situation where if you're playing in like a large group of players and you're last on the initiative, especially like D&D, and you're a mage, you're like,
you should be looking up already.
By like the third turn, you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then the person goes, you're like, oh well, shit, I gotta go do that, you know, like
and like knowing what that spell entry is gonna mean when you read it is an example of knowing the rules, and you can look up the spells between turns. Like, what am I gonna do on my next turn? Let's flip here so that when your turn rolls around and say, I want to cast X, it works like this, and the GM will work with you on interpreting that.
Yeah, I think my own input on that would be, don't concern yourself with learning so many of the rules if it has absolutely nothing to do with your character. If your character isn't carrying a gun, don't go look up like the dual pistol rules and the offhand firing and all that. It doesn't matter. You don't. So I've seen so many people.
Cleric, what you doing in the wizard section?
Like I've seen so many people. Like it's like,
and you know what, like
I'll be like in the middle of announcing what action is, like, oh, don't forget the ambidextrous. You don't have the ambidextrous merit. Don't forget the penalty. And I'm like, are you even playing the person with 2 guns? No. Why are you telling me?
And well, I mean, to be honest with you, like again, the deeper an understanding my players have of the system they're playing with, the easier I have, the easier time I have. Like the number of questions that I get asked, like especially since I'm playing basic wave thing, where the rules are very, very esoteric and not very clear cut.
Or you have to interpret how they mean this particular word.
Right.
What does this mean?
And it's the number of like I already get a lot of questions, and the more you understand the system, the fewer of those questions I have to answer, or the less I have to explain to answer that that question, because there's more common ground of our understanding of the rules, so that I can educate more quickly. We get right back to the action. So at the same time, yeah, you don't need to know things that aren't relevant to your character, but understanding the system as best as you can does help everybody at the table. Not because you know the rules, but because you waste less time having basic stuff explained to you.
Right.
Knowing the basic stuff is important. Like, okay, what numbers do you add to do initiative? What numbers do I add to get my hit? How do I do this? Like basic stuff like that, but if you're running a game to teach.
I know people that have been playing World of Darkness games for 20 years that still ask, what do I roll for initiative?
It's my fucking shattered memories. It's plus occult.
No, like, and those are players. I have never played a tabletop game where there wasn't a new person to the system. It never happens. I've always, and sometimes sometimes I got somebody who's new to the system and somebody who's new to tabletop role playing in general. Like that's almost every group I've ever been in. So I'm totally fine with teaching stuff if that person can learn. If by the time we get to session 7, there have been 2 combats a session, so this is combat number 14, and you're still asking me what your initiative is?
Yeah.
You should at least know where it is on your sheet, because I've pointed it out to you 14 times.
There's literally a thing on your sheet that says initiative. You should at least know to look there.
And it is really obnoxiously insulting for somebody to not dedicate the effort it takes to figure out that stat is on their sheet. Right.
And see, Pirate Badgers, if you need to use a notepad, good on you.
Awesome.
That is fantastic. Do you know how many people I've played with that have full fucking notebooks of stuff and leaves everywhere and just write it all? If you can't, if you're having...
When I sit down to do a new game, when I learn a new system, even though I'm almost always the GM, I learn a new system. Like I take notes on how the system works.
There's a million different little things handwritten there, like a million. That's all handwritten stuff. Like write it down.
Yep.
If you can't remember it, write it down.
So knowing the rules, being prepared with them. There's the flip side of that. There's being the fun police. There's the rules lawyer. I commend the rules lawyer for knowing the rules.
Literally, me and Pook both groan when you say the word.
I commend the rules lawyers for knowing the rules. He at least shows enough interest and investment in the game to understand how everything works. I love that. The problem with the rules lawyer isn't that he knows the rules. It's not even that he memorizes the rule book. Oh my god, give me more players that memorize the rulebook, holy shit. The problem with the rules lawyer is that they,
you can't do that because on page 63 it says that rogues can... Fuck it, it's important to the story. Shut up.
They put the rules before the game.
They put the rules for the... Here's how an RPG works, okay? Step 1. The game master describes the situation and the scenario to the players, in which players find out what the problem is. 2, the players narrate their actions in response to the problem to the GM. 3, the GM describes the GM determines the results of their actions, and then narrates, and we return to step 1. You'll notice that step 3 there is that the GM determines the results of somebody's actions. Okay, and it is I myself encourage my players to stop describing things to me in mechanics and start describing things to me in actions. I don't care. Okay, so 3.5. D&D 3.5 introduced an extensive skill list with a lot of individual rules for each skill, and that was fine. However, what it wound up doing, by providing a list of what your character can do, it accidentally and probably unintentionally silenced all other potentials. For instance, if I put the big golden ruby gem things of valuable +5 in the eyes of a 60-foot statue, how are you gonna get up to that statue? Somebody rolls climb. Somebody, casts a spell. Somebody raised their hand and says, "Can I design a system of pulleys that we just lift ourselves up with some rope, the wood, and the wheels that we've got?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but now what do I tell the player what to roll for that?" Right? I gotta educate how that works.
Yeah.
This is something that is way outside of the bounds of what the system was designed to handle, and that's perfectly fine. Because the players should be able to apply their ideas to the obstacle to overcome it and get their reward at the end. Not the players should be finding out what key binding it is in this virtual simulation of a video game they have to input to accomplish the goal. Yeah. And the rules lawyer is while a lot of these rules lawyers are trying to help the game run consistently, you become a rules lawyer when you interfere with that, when you turn the game into that key-binding video game simulation because the rules explicitly say XYZ, and you attempt to circumvent or undermine the GM's call in a given scenario. Thoughts?
I've run into a lot of situations where people want the game to emulate for them. And so they stick to the rules really, really close to try to have it emulate for them, and I don't understand why they want that.
What do you mean
from a tabletop?
What do you mean emulate?
They want the game to represent accuracy in what they're doing. They want the system. The system rolls the results for you, kind of tells you what to do, kind of thing.
You press W to climb.
Yeah, press W to climb.
Instead of, what do you do?
Right.
There's a statue here, what do you do? Instead, the game says press W to climb.
Right, that kind of thing. Or they want the really granular, okay, this gun is different from this gun. Okay, now I want a system to yeah. Is it an upgrade? If I fire from this gun, do I roll this gun differently from this one because they're supposed to operate differently? Okay, now how does it handle distance? Now how does it handle ammunition? They want all of that. And then when they find people that don't want that level of detail from dice rolls, they almost feel like those people are being lax.
All right.
I don't particularly care that this katana is balanced differently from a short sword. They both have a sword roll.
They both have a +3 to hit and a +3 to damage.
No, that's legit. That's the difference between fluff and mechanic. That's also two different people sitting down at the table looking for two different things.
But right. The katana should be sharper.
And it's not wrong, but I've seen it's weird because I've seen the majority of rules lawyers being the people that also love the very mechanics driven stuff.
Yep.
And then when they run into somebody that is more, I don't want to say more of a role player because it makes it sound like I'm saying they're better role player, but they're more focused
they're more
on
of an improv
role playing aspect.
Yeah, they're more focused on the improv and the character and the story.
They feel like that
instead
person
of the combat.
They feel like that person is the one that's being unfair. They feel like that person is the one that's being lax because they're narrating more rather than actually abiding by the rules.
Right. All right, what about you, Plutes? Rules lawyers, go.
Rules lawyers are dicks in my eyes. The only rules lawyers I've ever experienced are the people who like to argue with the GM, who say, and I shit you not, the words argue with the GM just came out of my mouth. You want a surefire way to get killed? Argue with your GM. It's the same people that will argue. Let me take the katana and short sword argument here, Pook, if I can take that as an example. a katana is a finesse weapon.
Right.
A short sword doesn't require finesse; it just requires regular weaponry. They're different things. The rules lawyer will sit there and argue that he can fight with a katana without a minus because it's the same as a short sword when the game shut up, the game doesn't work that way.
Right.
You literally just want to yell that in their face. Shut up, the game doesn't work that way. Can we please move on? And they're never it's not the difference in questioning the rules, it's always they are telling the GM what they think should happen. And that's rude in my mind, like I understand questioning it, like maybe making the case for like, well, then can my character practice for a week with the katana and now I can use it without a minus because I spent the week practicing with it but I still have this. Maybe you're not.
So what you're getting at is like what makes them a rules lawyer isn't that they want to use the rules, it's how they handle themselves at the table and the way they disrupt or argue the rules.
They almost argue the rules to make it so that they can do this.
Yeah, because
the GM will tell them no, and they'll be like, "Well, no, I can do," and
yeah, right. Or I've seen it more of the other side where they spend more time correcting the GM, because I guess the rules lawyers I've seen, they're not trying to be power gamers themselves, but they're always concerned that everybody else is getting away with more than they're getting away with.
Than they are. Yeah. And that's the thing. And sometimes, it's even more, some people find it aggravating when somebody has more RP time because this person likes to ask more questions than this person. And like I said, the only rules lawyers that I've really, really dealt with are the ones that like to argue with the GM even after the GM has said, or they like to, for some ungodly reason, I literally witnessed this, they're arguing that another character can't do an amazing thing because of this in the books.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Who are you to crap all? The GM said yes, shut up.
Yeah. That's a perfect example.
I've literally seen that where
they always feel like the other players are getting away with too much.
Well, no, they just thought of a cool thing.
That's touching on a couple of things that we're going to talk about as we go along. We're going to talk about working with the GM. We're going to talk about the spotlight, and we're going to talk about we're going to talk about all that stuff as time goes. But that seems the gist of it is that like everybody here seems to be saying that the idea behind not being a rules lawyer is don't argue the rules, understand them, but don't argue them.
The rules are more like guidelines.
And like Pirate Kitty said, and it's been brought up on like the last time we did this, and we've talked about it a lot, is that the rule is that you handle rules disputes after the game.
That's true. For this circumstance, it works this way.
I have never played at a table that didn't use that rule since I discovered it, and I've always used that rule myself. The basic, like, it's simply the no rules lawyering rule is whatever the GM says go, like my ruling trumps the books. At the time, after we go through, I as the GM, I want the rules to be consistent. I want the players to have a sense of what things they can do, because like the whole point of an RPG to me is for players to overcome challenges and tell a really good story. And like there's the RP and the G, and I want to do both of those things, right? And for that to work, you have to know what the rules are. But if I make a call, right, I don't want to break the flow of play. So afterwards, we will have a discussion. I'll read the rules and I'll go with what's in the book. I'm not against what's in the book, but I'm not going to stop to look it up. I'm going to go with what I feel makes the most sense.
This is how I feel this should work, and we'll figure it out later.
And after that, next time that rule crops up, everybody has the understanding. It's been discussed. We'll be able to remember it, and it's not some obscure shit in the middle of a book that's interrupting what we're doing.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's move on from the rules lawyers thing. And let's talk spotlight.
Spotlight.
Being a good player inherently involves an understanding of spotlight. This is in part it's in part the GM's responsibility. Like I as a GM, I go out of my way to make certain that I have things for each player and every character to be at the center of. When I'm talking about the spotlight, there are a couple of key pieces here. There's take your turn when it's your turn. Don't back away and be shy and not do stuff when it's your time to shine. And then also know when everybody else is having their time to shine, because everybody else has dedicated their time and committed their time to play at the table, and you don't want to deny them what it is that they came here to do, or you don't want to take away their fun, right? So you have your moment of being in the spotlight, they have theirs, and then something I see like this. A lot of people, when I mention this, they bring it up and they're like, oh, it's because gamers are socially inept, or because this, that, and the other thing. Talking over people.
It's like, no, you get excited. You get excited. I want to react to this. Everybody wants to react to this.
Everyone wants to react to this. And a well-run table, like the GM will say,
oh, the car. Now what do I do?
The GM will say, all right, Tanya, you're dead. You just got run through. And everybody goes, right? And then around the table, everybody gets their chance to play their reaction. And this goes right into the spotlight thing. Letting everybody have their chance to play involves not interrupting them. And this can get really tricky when you have somebody who plays a character that will interrupt, right? The strict and simple answer I found is you let somebody finish what they're saying, you let somebody finish their character's reaction, whatever, and then you say, hey, my character would interrupt at about this point when you said that, right?
Yeah.
So you get that far, and my character will talk over your character. You narrate that this is happening. Instead, don't do that part. If your character is going to be rude or a jackass, that's the time for you as the player to narrate this in the third person, saying, my character does this jackass thing. Don't do that jackass thing to the guy across the table, for the love of God.
Right. That's actually a big thing. Is I think it's actually more challenging to play a character that has those kinds of traits at a table, especially when you're trying to be mindful of the other people.
Yep. Yes. And it all boils down to the talking stick. If you just respect the goddamn talking stick. All right. So this segment is spotlight, how to take your turn, when to let other people take their turn, and respecting the talking stick. We'll talk more about like playing an asshole character. That's a really nice thing to touch on. We'll get the role-playing segment of the discussion. I'm gonna add this down here.
Yeah. Sorry, somebody is poking me. Sorry.
All right. So Pook, since I'm gonna spare Plutofaerie she's being assaulted.
No, we're fine. Okay, so no. I forgot to go away on Skype, and so somebody had a business question, and I had to answer with business, and then I told them I'm gone now.
All right, so Pook, the spotlight, go.
Like the idea of respecting people in the spotlight, maybe.
Let's go. Let's break this into 3 parts. Taking the spotlight.
Okay.
Being a good player and taking the spotlight when it's your turn. Go.
It's obviously really important to I've got an idea here, but I'm trying to put it in words because
start yelling out words and we can figure it out.
Because I think it actually ties well into Dix is not the word. I think it ties well into the fact that we were talking about the fact like we were just talking about rules lawyering and knowing the rules and stuff like that. And a lot of that is in play. A lot of that is something that you're mindful of to keep the flow going, but also to be mindful of like treating the GM as somebody that's a good player. And when you receive the spotlight, that's more your time to interact with the GM as a pair of role players, right?
Ooh.
And so when things, of course, like the rules lawyering and stuff gets in the way, it actually prevents that from happening, especially if you are the person that is not in the spotlight and then somebody else is in the spotlight and you're like, hey, but the rule. So I think this is all a good number of topics about respecting everybody at the table. Like the best way to be a good player is to respect everyone, and the best way to be a good player in the spotlight or to take the spotlight is you don't want to use that time to I've got like an example like right here, and I'm just trying to.
No, if for the record, I'm totally okay with just blurting stuff out because sometimes that is what's blocking the other thing.
Right,
so
right.
Like you should, yeah. So if you've got an example, just if you want,
drop it.
Drop it like it's hot. Spotlight.
No, I'm gonna have to give up the spotlight here because I don't have my words together.
All right.
And I'm going to be a good person at the podcast table and pass the spotlight.
Okay, so Plutz, the spotlight is on you. Okay, so here's an example of what not to do. Okay,
yeah, I gave you an example of what not to do. Okay, but I would like to mention that it's not unheard of to pause and think about your actions beforehand and just kind of double check things and say, hey, you know what, just make sure you know what's going on the battlefield, because that is a big thing, especially if you're playing in a large group. Confusion about where the battlefield, what the hell's going on. I think a big thing about spotlight, number one, if you're not in the spotlight, pay attention to other people. Like, and it's not, like, pay attention to the GM and what he's saying. Pay attention to, don't sit there and fiddle on your phone if it's not your turn. Don't sit there and you can flip through a book and stuff, but just try to be a part of the group, even if it's not your turn. I've seen some people, especially with the invention of cell phones, when it's not, all they do is they roll to attack, and that's what they do their turn, and then they go, I got texts. Put your damn phone away. So I have actually seen that. Just pay attention to the other players. Pay attention to the GM. When the GM is talking to you, look at him. Or look at the interact, I guess, is my biggest thing. And that is a big thing that I have seen, is that sometimes people have this aversion to eye contact and keeping eye contact, or because they think it's like, you stare at someone, it's threatening. But when the GM is telling you a story, it's kind of rude to be flipping through a book or looking at your character sheet or fiddling out some stats or something. He's telling you you're a part of the story. Listen, goddammit.
Okay. So
yeah, I like that. Like the concept of when you even if the spotlight isn't on you, if somebody else has the spotlight, you're still paying attention to that.
I think even when you're not playing, you're still playing.
Yeah.
Like this is a good time to have an idea of like when it comes back around to you,
right.
What are you going to do? I have actually seen this a lot where, we'll have combat scenes and we've got like 6 people playing our game. So by the time it comes back around in initiative order, someone's like, okay, where are we? What's going on? And this happens every round.
Yep.
That, or someone does something like so crazy for their character and everyone's like, oh, and then the one asshole's like, what happened? And you're like,
yeah, like I don't I tend to run games for smaller groups. Darkness Rising is the largest group I run for right now. I tend to run groups for I run games for 1, 2, or 3 players. And so I part of that is that, combat was more involved and there was less, but like nothing is more irritating as a GM than having to be the one who explains every 3 turns what happened for the past 3 turns. Right? And like it's one thing, like I in larger groups, what I eventually started doing was I would keep track of what was going on. And at the end of the round, as people are rolling up initiative, I'm narrating what happened in that turn of the fighting, and that's when you're paying attention. And it's like I'm not necessarily like if somebody has their phone out for a second because they got to do something or they received a text right now, right? But the that concept of like, okay, so what's going on here is when you're this isn't like Pook had a really good point when he said that, the spotlight is your chance to interact with the GM. Yeah. Right? That's your chance to as 2 role players, sit there and role play with each other. At the same time, you're all here to play together. And so it's important to recognize that is your turn to play with me as the GM.
Together.
But when it's Plutofaerie's turn to play with me as a GM, you don't cease existing, and it's rude to Plutofaerie to be like, whatever, I'm fuck. And then wait for somebody else.
I'm talking about the notorious one.
That's what I was trying to go with that. Where it's like, I think the most important thing about when you hold the spotlight is to also respect when you don't hold the spotlight.
Yes.
Because I think as soon as it becomes somebody else's turn to get the focus, and you immediately put that aside, you're just basically saying that you're not interested in their portion of this. Yeah. That you're not a part of what's going on with whatever's going on with them, and you are.
And let's like I realize we discussed last week collaborative storytelling. We really well established that I run a very narratively focused game. And in a game like the one that I'm running, okay, I view all of my my games as TV shows, not in the sense that I'm putting them on stream for you guys to watch, but even before that, like I thought of I build my campaigns in a very like TV series format where I have a season that is built up of episodes, and each episode is an adventure, right? And you get all these adventures in a row, and they tell an overarching story that connects but the adventures themselves have a beginning, middle, and end that conclude, right? And then season 2 starts, and it's even the same cast. Now imagine if you were watching a show, and whenever one character, like the only thing you paid attention to was one character in that show. And like whenever somebody else was talking, or whenever some other character was on screen doing their acting thing, and you just stopped paying attention, but you caught everything that one character you paid attention to said, would you get the show at all? Would it make sense? Would you like, how could you consider yourself somebody who was involved in the show, a fan of the show, or how can you say you like that show?
Well, this is also a good time to prepare what you're going to do when it comes around to you again, because you should have some kind of reaction. You should have some kind of reaction to what other people in your group are doing. It might not everything is going to be like, but everything should get something from you.
All right, this is a perfect time to transition into working with the other players at the table as part of being a good player.
Kill them all in their sleep.
So this is another slightly wide topic. Working with other players is I don't want to name any names, right? But they'll know who they are if they ever watch. The way I role played was forever changed a couple years ago. In Dusk specifically, and I played with a specific person. I was playing Aubrey. Aubrey is a staple character of mine, and I put so much effort into making certain that the essence of Aubrey was present in his post, and that Aubrey, like, I communicated who and what Aubrey was, and then one day out of the blue, this player took who and what Aubrey was and incorporated it into their post, into their turn. When their character opened their mouths, they were acknowledging who and what Aubrey was, and reacting to who and what Aubrey was, and playing into Aubrey being who and what he was. They didn't simply play their character, reacting to my character. In their roleplay, they described my character. They brought me into what they were doing, and that from that day forward, like, I never roleplayed the same way again. I could finally let go of having something to prove about my character and start playing my character in a more involved story. I was suddenly less concerned with my character being acknowledged, and I could start interacting with and actually playing. And that was a big thing to me.
And with the way that online venue worked, it's something to understand that while the setting itself is one world, it really does seem like it's actually several different worlds based on like each player and their own character.
Yep.
Because if a player isn't interested in something, they won't work it into their own play.
Right.
No matter how much it actually affects the world around them.
Yep.
They won't, and it's a really weird format to work with, where you have to being a good player is actually a bit more of an exercise than it is the tabletop. If only because everybody is so in such a position where it's really easy to be a dick.
I think like a really good example of what I'm talking about here, of incorporating the other players into your play, would be Tanya. Tanya was a very curious, obnoxiously inquisitive character. Tanya was incapable of interacting with the other players without interrogating them, because she didn't have all the information. She just wanted to know, and she was very innocent, very happy. When we first introduced that character, she was annoying as fuck, right? And it was awesome. It was characterizing, and the other players actually reacted to that. And it wasn't just that their characters thought she was annoying, but their characters started to like in Levi's play, Matt, the player who played Levi, would mention how many questions Tanya asked when he was describing his own character's actions. And Pythagatron, who plays Axel, would describe would describe how, like, he was preparing himself for the onslaught of questions whenever he went to talk to Tanya. And that really brought Tanya to life in the narrative for everybody involved. And if all you're doing is playing you, you're not working, if you only play you and you refuse to describe or work with the other players, then A, you're never going to know if you actually understand what that player is playing, and B, you're really denying yourself the chance to collaboratively create something together where everybody feels as though they've contributed.
You killed the heart of the team.
I did. then okay,
you just
so then
murdered it.
camaraderie and character conflict.
They all interacted with my character, and they all made jokes about how many questions I asked and how curious I was, and that it wasn't a bad curiosity. It was just an annoying curiosity.
This leads into the next part of working with other players, which is character camaraderie and character conflict, which are two very different things, and are some of the most amazing games I have ever had have been revolving around these two player abilities. Camaraderie
Bible thumps for Tanya.
Camaraderie is when your character will go out at like the loyalty and self-sacrifice that they will put forward for each other, right? Where the characters start to build relationships with each other, and the characters start to like and dislike each other, and they start to explore, like, where two characters can have a relationship where they get along and they really like each other, even if there are things about each other they dislike, right? Camaraderie is being able to get along. Camaraderie is the part of the meta game that says the rogue shouldn't probably steal from his party members or slit everybody's throats in their sleep.
But then there's the fact that he's a rogue and he's chaotic evil. So
and that's the flip side of that. Like, camaraderie is mostly about what happens in character. Character conflict is handled primarily out of character to keep everything flowing really nice and well, where two characters will horribly disagree. And what you want to do is, like without character conflict, your party is going to be a lot less tense. And maybe you don't want the conflict at your table. I'm not telling you you should, but I am telling you that Levi and Axel at each other's throats is amazing. It's awesome.
It's awesome.
And being able to play characters who really fucking hate each other while still allowing the game to move forward, and being able to take your character's conflict with another PC and approach the player of that PC and say, hey, our characters really don't see eye to eye here. Why don't we do something awesome with this and make something happen? Like, do you want to tell a story, like, with another player going, do you want to tell a story arc where these two characters butt heads and something stupid happens and they have to work with each other or see eye to eye?
I really wish that would happen more.
It's like
the thing ever when it happens, but so many people are like, my character doesn't like your character, so I'm just not going to roleplay with you today.
Yep.
Yeah, and you're like, but okay.
And I'm like,
go sit in your sad
and
corner
like in an online environment, which is where you do most of your play proof, like, it's an entirely different beast.
It really is.
At a tabletop, we have to play together, like, as players.
Right. And and I try to explain to people in the online environment that sometimes you can't control who your character runs into. Like, you as a player should not have a problem with me, because I want my character that has a problem with your character to interact.
Right, and it's one thing, like, that in-character, out-of-character separation is an important part of role-playing, but I want to avoid it sounding, what does it mean? Like, what's the deal? Like, I don't, like, I want to say it's an essential part of playing at a table and getting really involved character development, but at the same time, I don't want to communicate as much about that as if I had just blown raspberries for 5 minutes. So, like, how do you do that, and what is it to do that? And to me, the way I've found it is that when two players are playing characters who really fucking don't like each other, or there is a real dislike and a real problem with each other, those two players should come to an agreement with each other that they want to do something about it, not to resolve it necessarily, but that they want to tell a story where that conflict results in a cool thing, so that you get the sense of the players working together, even if the characters are not.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe it helps if, when that conflict comes up, you specify in the way that you're narrating, instead of saying, I do X, Y, Z. Perhaps that is the time to break that habit and say, my character thinking X, Y, Z does X, Y, Z.
So that there's difference between you and your character, because boy, oh boy, can you break off a little more than you can chew. Oh God, if you piss someone off.
It's I know this is a topic that's just going to keep coming up, because I think it's a general role-playing topic. It's just keep the IC and the OOC separate. God.
Right, and that's that.
Find ways to help yourself do that, but do it.
Yeah, like definitely find ways to like. And for me, it has always been to remind yourself constantly and actively that you are telling a story with this other player about two characters who don't like each other. And if you can keep that perspective, if you can remind yourself that that's what you're doing, the roleplay will be so much better. It goes against a lot of conventional wisdom. Is, oh, you want to get in character and immerse yourself and you want to be in it. Yes, but no.
But don't Christian Bale on somebody.
Like, yeah,
seriously.
like,
oh my god. She just said Christian Bale, and immediately I know that you're going to get this reference, Grant, because it is the topic altogether.
Yep.
Mitch. Yorgi.
Yes.
Aubrey.
Yes. Okay, so this is an example of the online role playing. The online role playing that Pook and I did. We were playing in a classic World of Darkness room. Aubrey was, and in this instance, he was a changeling, the dreaming troll. He was a fae, and he was not like in this setting. He was a fae who had, over the course of a long period of play, become one of several characters in this room that had earned his place as a crossover on the werewolf side of things. Which is really not, like, it's supposed to be a point of contention with werewolves because they are xenophobic as fuck. Like, they just don't like anybody else. And yet Aubrey, as a non-werewolf, not even as a kinfolk, like, he had no business, like, through his genetic lines, being a part of werewolf culture, had been accepted by the totem that the werewolves followed. And he had defended the werewolves and he had worked with them, and he really got them. Like, he was the werewolf that should have been born a werewolf, but wasn't. And Yorgi was a character being played by Mitch, who was another player in the room. And Yorgi was a traditionalist. Yorgi was the Yorgi was the character whose voice said, "What the fuck is this troll doing here? He's a freaking fae freak. Like, this is werewolf. Like, why do we trust any of these guys? He's not one of us. What's wrong with you?" Like, that was his character. And
he played it well.
And he played it really well. Like, I loved that character, and I loved the conflict. And I specifically sought out a scene with this player between our two characters where they had a common goal, but horribly disagreed about who should be accomplishing it. Right. And it was a great scene. I remember that scene really well. It was really good. And that's the kind of stuff that you can't do if you are so in character and you are so in the heat of the moment that you look across the table and yell at somebody. It is not on that person to be able to say, they're not yelling at me. It's on you to make certain that you have communicated correctly. And it's on you to make certain that you are not yelling at them.
And I've been guilty of that. I have absolutely been guilty of yelling at somebody, and it's my character yelling at them, and then be an adult. If you have yelled at somebody and it was a mistake, at the end of the adventure, you need to apologize.
Yes.
You need to go and you need to say, hey, I know things got a little heated. I am hoping that you didn't take it personally, but if you did, I am sorry. That was my fault.
Yeah, because it really is like,
you know,
if you are role playing your character yelling at somebody, the onus falls on you to not yell at the other player, and
sometimes it happens.
And them thinking that you're yelling at them is your fault unless you have explicitly, clearly, and 100% without a doubt executed that so that it was not an attack on the other player. And if there's room for doubt anywhere, you need to work on that.
You're the one who needs to apologize, not the other person. There was no misunderstanding. The person having the misunderstanding does not need to apologize. You need to apologize.
And it's gonna happen. Like,
you went a little overboard, you know.
And even in those cases, like, nobody gets away without doing that. Like, everybody will do that. It's a hobby where we put ourselves in the shoes of fictional characters, and we want our characters to be emotionally hyped up, which means that if we're doing things right, then we're going to wind up being emotionally hyped up, and then it's going to boil out, and there's going to be a miscommunication. It'll happen. Guaranteed.
Just talk about it. That's the biggest advice I can give people. If there is even a shadow of a doubt with you, especially that, oh, I think I might have hurt this person's feelings, you need to go and apologize and be like, hey, I'm super sorry. I'm a jackass.
Right, and I bring up that character Yorgi because, like I said, I think that Mitch did a very fine job with Yorgi's point of view.
Yep.
And getting that across so well that people actually started to dislike Mitch because of it.
Right.
And yeah.
Yep.
And I never understood that, because they took one of my lines. Is like, I was a storyteller in that room, but the storyteller position was more along the lines of, I made sure that people kept to the rules and they played fairly. I was more of a moderator than I was the person guiding the story. So I saw a lot of the other side of it, and I never understood that, because they took my words of, make a character for the game, don't try to fit the game to your character, and then saw this character with an opinion that wasn't everyone else's and goes, look, he's trying to make the game fit his opinion. And I'm like, no, he's playing a character.
And I'm gonna quote somebody in chat. I think it was Vampkiss that said, "Pick a line of communications other than psychic vibrations."
Psychic vibrations.
That goes both ways too. Like,
oh my god,
I'm super sorry.
So much. Like, it happened to Jen so much.
If people yell at you and you feel like, whoa, like if you have the emotional reaction of like, I'm being yelled at. All right, just like hold up your hand and be like, whoa, wow, like I'm too into this for a second. Like that is, I need a break. I need a moment. Like let people know that you have, like that you're not suddenly comfortable, right? Because otherwise they're not gonna know.
Yeah, like, right? Don't be afraid to call somebody out, because if you're with a group of friends where you and tabletoppers where you can't say, hey, I'm feeling a little attacked here, can we tone it down? And they're gonna yell at you.
You need a new group, like hands down, like no questions. Like that is immediately just like fling over the shoulder. You're done. Like if you can't do that, no, I'm totally with you.
I hate to say it, but if you stand up for yourself and say, hey, can we tone things out a little bit? I'm feeling a little attacked, and everybody laughs at you. Burn the house down.
All right, let's move on to the next next thing here.
Squeegee's like, no, please don't burn the house down.
Please don't burn my house down. All right, the next part of the last part of being a good player that we've got here that we haven't talked about yet is letting the GM know what you want to do and working with him to accomplish it. You can ask. I don't know if Arendis is in chat right now. But I like just today I had a conversation with Arendis. I don't know if Kajera is here today, but if for the same game, I just had conversations with both Arendis and Kajera, asking what it was they wanted to do with their characters. Like, I've noticed you've been doing X, Y, Z. Are you looking for this? What was that when your character flipped out and did X, Y, Z, so that I can set up something that you want to play it. I want to give it to you. I want to run that. And it is. I feel like I go out of my way to know what players want to do, and that's not necessarily like every GM should have a general idea of what the players are interested in. But the flip side of that is every player should be able to tell the GM what it is that they're interested in. And in larger environments, like when you're playing in a room online, not everybody knows what they want, and a lot of people are convinced they want things that they don't actually want.
Oh yes.
But at a table, when you're playing with people that have been playing for a while, what does that say? Any arcade?
Kappa.
At a table where there's I have 3 players. I want to give players the chance to play what they want to play. And if they don't tell me what it is that they want to play, I don't know that. I don't know what it is, and I can't give it to them. Plutofaerie.
I like to bring up that specific instance with Tanya, because she's dead. But no, I think we spoke about that earlier, where it was like, you didn't know if I was going to be okay with you killing my character, especially since this is kind of, it's kind of your, this is your campaign, this is your,
right.
What do we want to do about this? And I kind of we had a pause, and there was a little look there of like, that's why I mentioned, like, I specifically gave the hypothetical of, if Tanya's going to die, I would like to do a coup de grace and bite her neck out. If Tanya's that let him know it's okay. If I'm not gonna freak the fuck out, because
right.
Character death is a huge thing.
Yep.
So communicating with your GM, trying to find a way of saying, this is your call, but I'm not gonna freak out either way. Like.
Yep.
We can roll with this.
Yep.
So you're saying there was no psychic stuff going on?
No, there wasn't. She specifically did something just to let me know. Like it was. Hold on, I'm getting a transmission. It says
that sounds a lot like a Skype beep.
It says that Pukajitsu has an opinion. What is it?
What? I made penis motions.
That's not what I got.
That's
I
her
was
opinion.
psychic vibrating some wieners to you. So, but no, that it wasn't. You know, it was a matter of I gave him a hypothetical. I gave him an out of like, hey, what do you want to do here? Because I
Yep.
didn't know if he wanted to kill her. We didn't know what we wanted to do there. I had no idea that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
and like as another example from the same game, Axel's evolution from what he was to what he is, like he's going all Mad Max now, right? Pythagoras told me outright, hey, I think I want to do a little more Mad Max stuff. So when I set up an adventure for Pythagoras' character, what did I do? I gave him a villain to be personally vengeful against. And I set him into places where he could go Mad Max because that's what he said he wanted to play. And if he had never told me he wanted to go Mad Max, I'd have never known to do that.
Right. And in other games, he would have, like, not Piff personally,
yeah,
but somebody in his situation would have never mentioned it and then played for like a couple weeks and then got angry when nobody realized that they wanted their character to go Mad Max.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've seen that side of it.
If you have a...
Oh, sorry. Yeah, if you have an idea for something,
if you have a cool idea,
I've also seen rooms where they kind of stomp out cool ideas, but I'm not going to talk about the dark side of roleplay. I'm going to talk about the games where
we're going to talk about the creative, loving community of roleplay.
Yeah.
And because I've seen in the bad side where things happen in such a way where if you don't, when you make your character come out and flat out say, this character is the most badass at X, nobody will ever acknowledge that character has an interest in X.
Yep.
You basically have to throw it in their face
and
say, this is my character, he does X.
And that
hurts play so much.
Oh, it does. That touches on something that we're going to talk about in a little bit, where your character doesn't exist outside of what you say. But that is definitely like letting the GM know that you want to play a guy who's really good at, like, maybe you say, you know, like, I want to play a guy who's really good at throwing knives. That's an arbitrary, you know, maybe throwing knives is what you want to do. And if you just build a character who throws knives, the GM isn't going to necessarily look at that and be like, oh, I should work in knife-throwing situations. He's just going to be like, oh, that'll work out in combat. Right? But if you're like, oh, man, throwing daggers is so cool, I want to do that, like, cool.
Some sort of haunted circus where your teammate's the one on the board and you have to try and not hit your teammate to shut down the ride.
You have a GM's brain. That is so hot. That idea, I'm using it.
Love that. Can we do that
like,
right now?
Yeah, let's play it right now. Like, I'm down. See, but that's exactly like if I just hadn't mentioned throwing knives being cool outside of combat, Plutofaerie would have never had that idea.
Exactly. Like, okay, well, let's go to a haunted fucking circus. This will be great. You know?
Okay.
Right. And see, that's the kind of communication that needs to happen.
On the regular. It's not even about just when you create a character. Like, oh my god, I have these conversations every couple of weeks.
GM with cool ideas.
Cool ideas. I've had entire story arcs. There is a story arc, and I'm not telling anybody because spoilers, because it hasn't happened yet. But there are two separate story arcs that are going on in Darkness Rising as we speak that were Plutofaerie's idea that she brought to me and said, "Can we do this?" And I went, "Oh yeah." And the best part is I get the spirit of what she wanted. So I agreed to it, but I'm not giving her the letter of what she asked for.
I have
that
no
would be
idea
spoilers
how it's
for her.
Gonna happen.
She has no idea what's going on.
I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, it's not like she's coming up, you know, she's coming in with like a menu and she's like, I'd like the cheeseburger and superpower and yeah, go ahead. I'm not trying to talk over you.
But okay,
no, I'm actually reading what Pirate Kitty said. I'm totally
I was
something about an epic death here.
I was actually looking for a break so I could read it.
Everybody shut up and read Pirate Kitty's thing.
He's called your blood myself, ended dying, later found out my sister, wished for the elements that I was considering. Ha! That's cool. Okay, so
all right, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's
all right. So that's all stuff about how to participate in the game and interact with other people at the table. That is all out of character meta stuff that you can work on and like if I've noticed all of the stuff that we've talked about here is stuff that long-term players who have been in this hobby for 20 years are pretty much on top of because they've been down the road of not getting it done, and they've been at the table where people didn't do that. But I guarantee, like, every last one of those things, you've done it yourself because you didn't know any better, or there was somebody at the table who did that. And being able to just process, like... Yeah, no, I do it all the time, and like nobody's perfect. I can sit here
and talk about it, but I still do a lot of what we've talked about.
I've been known to flip through a book, and while other people are doing stuff, or and that's why I bring it up because it's a do as I say, not as I do.
Yep.
Yeah, my die roller's on my phone.
I definitely feel like
die roller's on my phone, so I'll occasionally check Twitter.
I definitely feel like we've covered the majority of table manners, and so it's safe to move on to the next place before
Never
we get
table flip.
But before I quit, I want $200 for character sheets. All right.
I want $200 for character sheets.
Obviously, tantruming is right out. Okay, I have to explain this to people. Like, they've got to know what happened.
Yeah,
right?
they've got it.
So I'll try something. That I was running a group. It was a Deadlands table, and we had a rule where there were 2 people who were it every week, and the rule was if you were it last week, you couldn't be it this week. Okay, I as the GM was allowing everybody into my house in the dead of fucking night, where other people I was contributing that much to the group, and everybody agreed that was worthwhile. So if you were it, you were either drinks it or snacks it, and you were the guy who brought that in, and it was and that way everybody equally contributed the food and drinks for the table, and everybody felt like they were contributing, and the group was a whole community, right? Well, 2 of the people were dating at the table. There was a guy by the name of Floopity Blah, and then there was Floopity Blah's girlfriend. And Floopity Blah's girlfriend pitched a bitch fit one day. Like, I wish I could say that there was a legitimate stance to be taken. There wasn't. It was just drama, and they rage quit the table. It was a terribly messy scenario, especially for Floopity Blah, whose girlfriend had just rage quit the table. And so Floopity Blah, instead of going, well, I gotta step down here, that was my girlfriend, sorry guys, or going, well, that's her problem, instead of taking anything that involved him being like, I'm not gonna be dramatic because this isn't my drama, right? He decided to rage quit and tantrum as well, and I am notorious for losing physical objects. I can't keep track of shit, and so before I learned to just keep everybody's character sheets on Google Documents, especially in a face-to-face game, which is what this was actually at a tabletop, he was holding on to the character sheets for us, and he literally declared that if we did not pay him the $200 he had invested in the game over the past year for snacks and drinks, we weren't going to get our character sheets back. He held our character sheets hostage, and in that moment became a meme, and was never taken seriously again.
That's it. I quit. $200 for character sheets.
$200 for character sheets. So that's that story. Don't be that
$200.
guy. Just don't be that guy. That's how you have good table manners. So the next thing, before we start talking about how to actively play and actively engage in the role playing,
bring $5 for pizza.
Seriously, let's talk about where the role playing starts and how, like, before you've even sat down to play the game, you can do things that will make you a better player when you're designing your character. And this is stuff that is intended to be system agnostic. Like, this could be D&D, this could be GURPS, this could be World of Darkness, this could be Deadlands, this could be friggin' Candyland, I don't care. Well, actually, I probably wouldn't want to talk about Candyland for 3 hours.
Dude, Peppermint Forest is the shit.
What are the things that you can do to help facilitate the game and do your best as a player when you're creating the character? Let's talk about the 3 biggins. This one I think is only gonna take a couple minutes because it's pretty straightforward. Your character should have something to do in a social situation. When the answer is not beat the crap out of stuff, and when you gotta interact with an NPC, your character should have traits, skills, stats, something. They don't have to be good at it. Maybe a complete lack of those abilities is what your character brings to the table, and then what you're saying is you're gonna play the guy who stammers and insults people by accident and pisses people off. Like, say what?
I go for the window.
Yeah, like maybe what your character has is a
completely inept characters are also
of having a spotlight. But if that's what you do, understand that what you were putting forward is that that's what you're going to play, and it's not going to be that you don't play in social scenarios. The whole point of social stuff, investigation stuff, and combat stuff is that those are the 3 things it doesn't matter what situation you find yourself in, you will probably have something to actively do, proactively, when the spotlight is on you, to play out and do when the time comes. If you cover your social, your investigative, and your combat stuff. I can't count the number of times I've been given sheets by people who aren't fans of combat scenarios with nothing to do in combat. Like, they have no combat, they have no offensive or decent defensive skills, no support abilities, nothing.
So what are you going to do when your turn comes up in initiative?
Right, like when your turn comes up in initiative, they sit there and they go, oh, well, I don't have anything to do. And then because, they self-declared that they don't like combat, and then they submitted a character, they built a character who had no combat abilities. And then that's fine if you want to play a bumbling, like, oh, run up and punch the dude, or like, run away, I'm a coward. Play that. But never look at me, the GM, after you failed to give yourself a combat-relevant trait, good or bad, and then say, I had nothing to play because our session this game was all combat. Because those sessions will happen. And like, it's one thing if you're going in and everybody has agreed that there will be no combat in this game. That's fine. But for your typical RPG session, even a non-combat heavy game will have the occasional fight. And if all you can say is, I stand here because I'm not a combat character, you have failed to be a player in that instance. You're not playing with people. You're not giving them something.
Even Tanya picked up a fucking crowbar.
Yeah, like, and Tanya wasn't a combat.
That's the thing, is that, like, you as a person in real life, if you find yourself in a fight with someone all of a sudden,
I'm gonna find whatever weapon I possibly.
You're not gonna stand there and do nothing. You will react. So you can't build these incomplete characters that have no way to react.
You can even help your teammates.
Even if
be bad at it.
Even if what your reaction is,
you get your ass kicked, but you still try.
Even if you even if your character's reaction is no, I won't fight, I'm a pacifist, right? And what you can do in that situation is play your character's pacifism. You can spend your spotlight going, guys, I'm gonna try and talk our way out of this fight, or you can actively put your hands up and say, I refuse to participate in this violence, right?
I'm a pacifist,
right? And that's fine. But you have to have that. You have to know that what's going to happen when when it's your turn in a combat scenario, that you are not just a waste of everybody's time, and that you are at least playing something. Just play something. Have something combative. Have something investigative.
Like I said, sometimes being inept is fucking hilarious.
Yes.
We have a wizard who literally cannot hit his Ray of Frost. He just keeps rolling lower and lower as he levels, and he once hit. And then he rolled the die, and he did 1 damage. And it was the greatest fucking thing ever. So
and most successful Ray of Frost.
And like, no, totally.
Most successful Ray of Frost was 1 damage. That kind of shit, like, we were hooting, wow, you hit with the Ray of Frost, and he just 1 fucking damage.
Yep.
And we're all just, we're all having a good
Everybody's
time.
having more fun because you were at the table, and that's really the mark of it. Do you have something that contributes to the fun in the 3 major scenarios?
Having fun.
Social. Yeah. Am I missing any scenarios here? Social, investigative, and combat. Is there anything else that doesn't fall within those purviews? Sex.
See, Wyvern, and that's a good example too, because even a character that's a pacifist might have some dodge, if dodge is that in your game. Might have some avoidance
there. Doesn't get hit, but just is like, nah.
Yeah, isn't gonna just stand there and take a punch, but it also isn't gonna throw a punch. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun to, there's lots of different characters.
Yeah.
Get over it. That's the end of the podcast.
Yeah, there you go. But no, okay. So is there anything missing from that? Like, just be prepared for the major situations that are going to crop up in the game. Have something to play in those scenarios.
And I want to mention, we're all a bunch of veterans here. I know it can seem intimidating that we're all like, well, then just do this or just do that. Right. It may seem like we have all of the answers. Please don't be intimidated by that. It just happens to be lots of years of experience. I know someone mentioned they're shy. They're shy while they're playing, and it could just take a year of role playing to get used to the spotlight.
I've never
just need to get used. Yeah.
I've never met a new player who wasn't shy. Never, ever in the history of ever have I ever seen somebody. My girlfriend is traditionally trained. She was a theater major. She has been up on stage acting out other characters. Like, she didn't talk at the table for a solid 4 months. It was intense.
My rogue barely said a word. My very first character barely said a fucking word.
Okay, so character histories. Now, Poke, you have a lot of opinions on this topic. I know you do.
I do.
This is where you get to cut loose, all right? Let's talk character histories. We'll start with Pook, and then we'll go to Plutz, and then we'll come around to me, because I also have a lot of stuff to say.
So we know by now that my experience has been a lot of online roleplay. I do play some tabletop stuff as well, but mainly online roleplay, where you actually have the time and the space to write and write and write. And and there's a little bit of like in this certain community, there's a little bit of elitism in the amount of writing that goes into, say, a character post or a character history.
Oh,
like if you can sit here and
God.
write a really long, well-established history that was a pleasure to read over coffee with with your thick-rimmed glasses,
And
then you've got a great character there. No, you don't.
I totally like Tracy Devlin's history.
That's it.
Tracy Devlin's history was 7 pages long. Tracy being my character. But it wasn't because, oh, I need to have enough text there to fill in the no. That's not the point. Her history wasn't good because of it.
So some people will like, push themselves to be like, okay, I got to work on a little bit more of the history today, and a little bit more of the history today, and finally they'll get around to applying the character. And the thing is that they're rewarded for putting in all that effort ahead of time with like extra freebies for the character sheet. I think it's great that you think you know your character that well. But I think it's also a hindrance because you've now taken everything interesting about the character, or everything interesting, and you've put it out of play. It's in the history.
Yeah.
It's in a place that maybe the storyteller will drag you back into, or maybe they'll find some hooks and they'll pull that into if they're good. But you've already done it all. All the interesting stuff is over here now. And then you're ready to start playing. I think a character history is something that should cover who are they, where did they come from, if they're supernatural, what happened, when did that happen, how did it change their life, where are they going now?
Right.
If you can cover those 5 points, it doesn't need who's your daddy and what. Okay, if you're a werewolf with some pure breed, I need to know who is your daddy and what did he do.
No, that's actually what that stat means.
Yeah, it's what the stat means.
My stat means my daddy was, and he did.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're a vampire? Who is your sire?
And what did he do? Yeah,
right, yeah.
Exactly. But, like, okay, basically, if you can explain the sheet, that's all you need in a history. Let's put it that way.
You and I are going to be on complete opposite sides of this discussion, but I'm going to let Plutz go first.
I like it, though.
It's going to be good. No, it's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of the middle ground. It seems like Grant is, like, volumes of, and that's...
And
I like to middle ground it. I like 3 sentences or three paragraphs, 3 pages, 3 novels. As long as your character is fleshed out and you're happy and you have a foundation with which to role play from. My monk right now literally has a 3-sentence character history. She grew up in her monastery. She was dropped off as an orphan. And now she's out and about in the world, and she's very black and white because she grew up in an orphanage. That's it. That's all you need. Right there. 3 little sentences. That's enough for a character. Or if you're like the elven barbarian in my party who has like 5 fully typed out pages of her character's history and how she came to be. Because she needs to be a little, it needs to be a little bit more complicated. That is also acceptable. I'm not reading it, but that is also acceptable.
Yeah. I've ran into a lot of I've ran into games where it's like you need a minimum of 3 paragraphs in your character history. Like they're actually telling you minimum length. Yeah.
And if you need that to help you to flesh out the character and say, okay, this is what makes this different from previous characters I've played, or stuff like that, little nuances here and there. The more characters you create, the more nuances you need.
So Pook, specifically where you and I are going to differ.
Okay.
Is where you had said that the history explains the sheet. I disagree. I think a history should be a story rather than a justification. I don't care where the dots and stuff came from, right? What I care about now, again, I'm the GM, okay? So when I see a character sheet, what I look for in a player's character history is you and I do agree on the idea where all the interesting stuff happened after, like in the backstory. I'm gonna go controversy here. Are you ready? Like I'm gonna drop some Eminem level controversy all over this role playing talk right now. I think that X killed my family is an awesome character concept.
Yep.
I love it. It is simplistic and it is cliched, but here's what it does. It creates an unresolved conflict in the character's backstory. It is a element of your character that is that drives them and motivates them, that I know will get a reaction out of your character. So if I write up an adventure where there is an evil X terrorizing a village, I know you're on that like white on rice. But there is a poor way to execute that. And that is if your history then goes on to say, so I hunted them down and killed them.
Yes. Like, I've actually, like, that's how some characters have made their name. Like, they're literally coming into play with the reputation of being the person that got vengeance on the person.
Right. The vengeance story is amazing, but you want to, like, what makes the vengeance story so cool is that you get to... Is the hunt. And that's not saying you can't have gotten vengeance in your backstory. But if the character's core concept is I am vengeful, then they shouldn't have accomplished their vengeance yet. Because what you're looking to play is the Punisher going berserk on crime. So why would you have written out all of, like, oh, I went berserk on crime already, I'm done. That's not
I'm retired.
The retired adventurer.
We're playing the retired pacifist.
Because now they want, like, remember how I said that in the format that I play in, that you had to throw out the I'm good at this to get people to accept it? Like, they wanted the recognition from the other characters already. So it was established in the character history because there was no wall between them and having their character accomplish it.
Right.
In play, there are walls.
That's the whole point of the play, is the walls.
And that's why, and I'm like, that's why I'm like, I really hate the history now. I used to be the person that would sit there and write a fair bit of history and document everything. I'm pretty sure that my history for Alex right now is probably a good 100, 200 pages.
In the example I used of Tracy Devlin, who is an NPC I just introduced in Darkness Rising. I don't know if anybody noticed that, but she's an old school character of mine. Her history was immensely long, and it integrated her into the setting and the specific setting of the game, not just the universe we played in, but it was riddled with enough detail to really bring out her emotional attachment to the problems she had yet to resolve. She hated her power. She felt that her power made her impure. Because of the religion that she follows, the werewolf's culture. Her brother had gone entirely missing, and I didn't know what happened to her brother. Her two brothers were just poof vanished into thin air one night. The person who had murdered her lover vanished into thin air on that same night. She came into play as a broken person who was depressed and a workaholic and an alcoholic who was going to be picked up and grow into being a more independent person and then explore all of this cool stuff. Like, her history was long because I wanted to set the stage with all of these questions that had to be answered.
And that's actually another good point, because, you know, you want to do you want to be the person that actually, like, should you say that every history should have a conflict in it? Like, should somebody introduce a conflict to the game with their character and say this character has an existing conflict, or are you going to say this is the game where the party gets a conflict, so the history doesn't need one?
I myself, as the GM, love making adventures personal to the PCs. There are only two ways to do this, one of which is to pull it out of their histories, and the other way is to introduce things to the party repeatedly over the course of many sessions and then draw on that. Judas Kennington is a perfect example. He was an NPC who was relevant for a long time. So personally, regardless, I think that in order for me as the GM to be able to make your character the center of their own part of the story and make the story personal to your character, you have to supply me something to start with, because otherwise we're going to go through 6 weeks of play before anything really gripping happens.
And I was going to say, maybe it depends on the GM at that point. Maybe you talk to your GM and say, what kind of character history am I allowed to make?
Maybe you could be a good player and work with your GM by telling him what you want to play.
Well, what kind of adventure do you have planned? Do you want to have a tragic backstory, or...
Now I'm going to rewind and say that maybe the history should be used as a justification for stats.
Okay.
It can be.
Now, here's why I say this. I want to see something that tells me why, when human average in the stat is 2, you have a 4. Not because you have a 4 and I'm scared that you're going to use the 4, but because your character has now shown an interest in this thing to a degree, to actually become professional level at it.
Okay, so effectively what, like, to translate, what I'm hearing is if you've got that high stat, then you would like to see that high stat incorporated into the character's story.
Yes.
Okay, that's different than using your history as a justification, because if you tell a player I need you to justify your stat, then they're just going to say, oh, I was trained in personal defense, so I have Kung Fu. Because they want to have Kung Fu in their sheet because they want to play a fighter, and that's not telling a story about Kung Fu.
No, because I've seen those bullet list histories too, and I'm just like so tired of them.
Yep.
But no, I mean, why is your character interested in this? Or why does your character have pure breed? Like, who's your daddy, and what does he do?
Yep.
Or things like that.
Your feats and your class and stuff, like...
So I think the history is a good place to establish a starting point of coming into the game. But I've seen it go so far in one direction, and I've also seen it go so far in the other direction, where
on July 13th, I had eggs for breakfast. On July 14th, I had steak for dinner.
I have read a character history that actually started about a character that has nothing to do with the character. Like, it's just
eons
like
ago.
it just started like, oh, like there's a fight in a bar bathroom, right?
Where my mom's getting pregnant with me.
That yeah.
Okay, sure.
Like yeah.
If you feel that's important.
And you know what, like, if that is a case of, like, you know, my parents is where your history starts, maybe what you want to tell is some dynastic, like, nobility and, like, the bastard son. But that's again, talk, like, that's...
The whole thing is that they're narrating the fight over here because it's more fluff and more room in the history.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's not tied to what's going on yet.
Anything. So they're just writing it because, hey, I had an idea. I just want to put it out there. If you have a really good idea and it doesn't fit anywhere in that current character's turn, write it down somewhere else.
Yep.
Use it.
I actually have a notepad file where if I have an idea, it could be just an individual scene, a character trait, an adventure, like anything at all, and it's filled with like one line from a quest text in Final Fantasy XIV that really grabbed me. Like, oh man, if I actually, like, these writers suck, but I don't. I could do something just like this, right? Never mind that by my interest here, they don't suck as writers. It's not the point, right? The point is I am awesome. That's the point being made here. But legit, like, and not everything fits, and I'll be like, oh man, I want to build a character around this, and I'll start the character with the idea of pirate. And by the time I fleshed out the character, I really like my character, but this is not a pirate at all.
This is not a pirate anymore. I have gone past pirate, and we are straight now on to ninja.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Okay. So the last thing to touch on for character histories. Originality is not a virtue. It's a bonus.
Yeah, don't worry. If you want to be Batman, be Batman.
Oh, this is where, okay, yeah.
If you want your character to, my family was killed by X, awesome. Are you having fun? Is the story cool? I don't care if it's been done before. I really don't. You shouldn't choke yourself out by trying to do something nobody has ever done. Don't. Just don't do it.
Don't.
It's all been done.
Not only has it all been done, but you're gonna look so, like, everything you do is gonna be so forced.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's gonna be so forced because you're gonna second guess your actions and be like, but does this come off too much like this trope?
Yeah, don't worry about tropes. In fact, have a blast playing into them sometimes.
Okay, so my most successful characters, and when I say my most successful, I mean the characters that I have been told by other people they love the most. Those are Aubrey and Tracy.
She's no Tracy.
Like it's an in reference, like, oh, he's no Tracy, but he's a kid.
No, he's no Tracy.
Tracy is literally every cop show, workaholic, bleeding heart detective you have ever seen in 30,000 TV shows. That's who Tracy is. That's who Tracy will always be, because I really like that.
Stabler.
I really like that, and that's what I want to play there. And so I built a story to play that character. In no way was I afraid of being the trope from the TV show, a character that you have met 300 times. I like it, and I've played it to the point where what she is and what the concept behind her character is isn't what people like about her anyways. It's the things she has done, the personality she has. By the time I was done with that character, she had 17 different kinds of kinfolk listed on her sheet that were not real because she didn't have it, but like she'd been adopted by so many people as like, oh yeah, she's my foxkin, oh she's my crowkin, oh she's my, like, it was absurd. And people really liked that character. There was not an original piece of shit in that character's history in the slightest. Everything was a trope. Everything was a big pile of all been done before, but it was fun.
Like, there was even, like, turning to the camera and monologuing. Like, it was, no.
Aubrey, the flip side, is a big, brute, gentle giant with an anger management problem who wants to rid the world of violence. He is a gentle giant with a big stick. Yeah, no, like seriously, like Aubrey is a little bit of a Superman story, and a little bit of a Batman story, and a little bit of a Wolverine story. Like, he's a little bit of all, but nothing in Aubrey is an original piece of work from me. It's all references and tropes, and that's the thing that nobody wants to admit, is that a good story.
Tiny Monk, I literally channel Merry and Pippin. The hobbits,
yeah.
The jovial, like the whole, nothing bad could possibly go wrong.
Right, and it's part of telling a good story, and like, I'm gonna piss off all of the literary authors of the audience. Part of telling a good story is
tropes,
relying on tropes and playing into audience expectations and things that they have seen before and know. Like, for the love of God, how original are you going to be in a D&D game? You know what's going to happen? You're going to kill some monsters, you're going to get some loot, you're going to level up, you're going to have some adventures, you're going to beat some bad guys, there's going to be some good, some evil, some dungeons, some gods, some magic, some swords. Like, really, how original are we going to be here? That doesn't mean how good are we going to be.
So, have you seen characters from players that understand the tropes of the game but still go for the strangest thing they can
the strangest thing they could possibly do? Yes.
Specifically to be different from everybody else?
Not specifically. Usually hilariously different, but never.
Okay.
I've never.
Hilariously different is like, I can respect that.
I cannot find stereotypical characters because everybody is so insistent on playing the anti-stereotype that the anti-stereotype. Like, I have yet to see in a long time a barbarian that is not an elven barbarian. Half-orc barbarian, haven't seen one in ages. I hate to break it to you guys. I hate to break it to you guys, but you're not Drizzt. Everybody is not Drizzt. In order to be Drizzt,
sir, it's Drizzit.
Drizzit.
Okay.
Okay.
First off, it's Drizzit. And you just told us to embrace.
What do you mean I can't put bracers on my ankles and make myself faster?
like legit. Please, for the love. Like, in order to make your character different from all the other elves, right? The first thing you need to realize is that there have to be other elves for you to be different against, and we're gonna get into this because your character doesn't exist outside of what you say. The same thing exists for the rest of the world. If you're playing this I am so alien to elves, like they have cast me out, I'm a barbarian, I am in this impulsive, rash, non-long living, like I'm too heat in the moment, you should still be aware of the fact that you are the face of elves to everybody else at that table. Because you're the only elf on the table. Now, that's not saying you can't play against the tropes and you can't play the outcast, but what that means is that there needs to be an adventure where you go and you meet all these other elves, which by comparison to you, make you look like this asshat. But it's important that you should still evoke elf to the other players by comparison to non-elves.
Do you think it's unfair to other players to actually do that, to actually pull off the strange characters? Because not only do you have to be responsible for the world itself contradicting your character, but you're now putting a responsibility on the other players in the party for their characters to act,
to stand up for it, almost to be okay with it,
to either be okay with it or to continually recognize how different you are.
I want to say, as long as it doesn't slow the play, as long as it doesn't that's really a big thing. I don't give a shit how weird you are. Just don't ruin the fun for everybody else with your weirdness.
No, I can see where Puka's going, where if you're going to play a character as an outcast, and I am in no way saying don't play outcast, but what I'm saying is, like, nobody plays the not outcast. Everybody has to break stereotype. Like, you should play a character where, if you are going to be different from most elves, It is on you to constantly specify that you are different than most elves. You cannot expect other players to have enough of a solid idea of elf for you to break and rail against.
Right.
Especially since, and this, in D&D specifically, as we're using this example, part of role-playing is being somebody you are not and putting yourself in those shoes. There is a reason why humans are the most versatile race, and they can be anything, and they're short-lived, and they're very creative, and they're adaptive as fuck, and that is our defining trait, is no defining trait. And then dwarves, elves, halflings, orcs, they all have these predominant, like, in a real-world scenario, if you start talking about people like, you'd be a racist fuck. Like, you would be a judgmental, stereotypical dick. But in this setting, in D&D, we identify dwarves as beards.
Short, stocky
fighters who know stonework, and if a dwarf isn't that, all right?
That's weird.
That's weird. But in order for that to be weird, you have to have the stereotype everywhere else.
Like, if you're a dwarf that's allergic to gold ore, I would love to see that RP'd out.
Right, no, legit. But the thing is, you have to understand that by abandoning the things that define a dwarf, you are abandoning being a dwarf, and you are no longer playing a dwarf. So what's the point of playing against the stereotype unless you are able to constantly evoke dwarf to contrast yourself against? If you can't do that, please don't try and play that. If you're new. Like, if you think you can, try it, awesome. I'm not saying don't be creative, I'm not saying don't play against stereotype, but what I'm saying is you have to realize that if you do that, you have to do it well.
It's not to say that those things are off limits, it's that you may want to cut your teeth on a couple more basic characters so that you get the feel for role play before you go doing something out crazy like that, just because you may not necessarily know how it works within the rules of the game, you know?
So maybe don't start with the redeemed Black Spiral Dancer.
Maybe don't start with the redeemed Black Spiral Dancer.
Maybe start with the elf rogue and the human mage and the half ogre fighter.
Like start with it's I like Matt. Mr. M. Dubois plays Levi on Darkness Rising. He's my co-player / GM in Magic and Myth, which is coming out soon, and he is the type of player who loves to tinker and play against stereotype and stuff like that. And we recently had a discussion where it dawned on him that if he doesn't establish the norm, breaking the norm means nothing. If he, when he gets a new power, he needs to use it as intended at least once or twice before he invents a crazy new use for that power, so that everybody else can go, oh, hey, that was cool and creative, right? But if you don't have that basis of what's normal, trying to play the thing that's different doesn't hit the, it's just game after game after game of a new normal.
Mm-hmm.
So you mean like a World of Darkness game where there's no mortals?
Yeah. No, legit. Okay, so there's originality is a virtue, is not a virtue, it's a bonus, with a side rant about not playing against stereotype so hard that there's no stereotype to play against.
Yeah, basically let's talk about it as a bonus. If your own spin comes into it, like if you're playing the stereotype and your own spin comes into it, more power to you. That's how you get it.
Yeah.
No, I honestly think that one of the things that I was gonna stop there, but I just reading something Walkzombie said in chat. One of the definitive elements of being a role player that I think a lot of people miss is characterization. That is to say, making your character into themselves as opposed to whatever their sheet says they are, in stats, dots, and factions. So you're a dwarf, okay, but what makes
all you have is a character sheet, you don't have a character.
Right, yeah. What makes your dwarf your dwarf? What makes your dwarf themselves as opposed to just stereotypical dwarf number 32? You should be able to do that while not breaking the dwarven stereotypes. You should be able to evoke a personality without having to rely on breaking these stereotypes before you start breaking those stereotypes, just in general, because I find that's a skill I find a lot of players lack, and they learn, especially in my games, where my games are very character-centric and very narrative, and we tend to do a lot of heavy-handed, emotional, role-playing, immersive improv stuff. And people will show up at my table for the first time, and they'll be a little overwhelmed because they've never had the chance, they've never needed to characterize. And then suddenly at the table, they're sitting with a trained, somebody who's personally trained in theater, and somebody who's been gaming for 30 years, and somebody else who gets so in character that I've literally seen them cry when an NPC dies, physically watch them have to step away from the table. Like somebody who had a legitimate anxiety attack when I said, "Do you cut them down? 3, 2, 1. I guess not." Like, that. But being able to refine your character so they're a recognizable them with a bunch of stuff already established for you because they're a dwarf is an important skill to have, and you should really cut your teeth on that and practice that and play that and get good at that in general. Like, that's...
And I don't say that a newbie, and that's because I can only think, it's the only word I can think of, and that's not to say that you can't just start right out playing some crazy character.
No, go ahead. Have fun.
Go ahead, have fun. If that's what you want to do, we're not going to tell you to stop, but just know your limits. It's not a bad thing to say, hey, this is my first time. Give me an orc fighter. Just so I can learn the system.
Yeah, just so I can
learn how to attack.
Learn what an orc fighter is. And like, by all means, like, understand the context of this discussion is how can I improve as a player to be a better player. And it, like, this is not stuff for brand new motherfuckers who have never played D&D before. Seriously, learn how to roll some dice, kick down some doors, like, get it out of your system so, like, oh, I rolled a 1 on my spot check, I guess I stabbed myself in the eye. Like, seriously, play those games. Do that wacky stuff because everybody should.
I think here's my advice on this. Don't make a character in such a way that you basically don't strive for trying to impress people with the tagline.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't be able to communicate in a 3 or 4 word blurb what makes your character so interesting and fun. If you can, well,
maybe you're just starting out. That's okay.
Yeah, maybe you're just starting out. But if you're like expecting that sales pitch, you know, to catch people,
my character's a dwarf who hates alcohol.
That's
a trait. That's not a character.
That's a trait. That's not a character, right?
Yeah.
I always basically I'd run into like people where I'd be like, okay, I'm interested in playing. Okay, so what's that character? So who's that character? You know, so who are you gonna play? And all I get back as an answer is, oh, it's a wilder satyr.
Right, they list off the options on the sheet instead of telling you who the character is.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
tell us your personality. What do they like? What's their favorite color? Things that aren't on the character sheet. Things that stats don't cover.
Right.
Things that are interesting.
Yeah. So don't go looking for the, oh, I'm playing the Sealy Redcap, because that itself is going to catch attention. No, make the interesting things, you know, who the character is, not your description of what the character is.
I feel like the mark of a really good character builder is somebody who can take a stereotypical character and make them interesting.
We are half ogre fighter. Half ogre fighter.
Yeah.
What became one of our most loved party members. He is that character. He had a 4 intelligence. And he had a heart bigger than any, like, that character started out as the simplest character ever, but the person who role-played it literally changed the path of the other 2 characters in there. And that's why I say, like, even the most stereotypical characters can change the world. You know? It changed the whole story.
And we've got a dwarf paladin, but the most interesting thing about her isn't the fact that she's a dwarf paladin, it's that over the course of the game, we've kind of maybe changed her alignment, and that's
right.
And resulted in one god being like, no, and another one picking her up, and everybody going, okay, what's up with her?
And so, like, yeah, the long short of it is, like, your character should be interesting not because they are original. If they are an original concept, more power to you. But don't mistake originality for being interesting, and don't think that you have to be original to be interesting. It's just not true.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so that pretty much covers character design, the character design segment of the show.
Can we take a pee break?
Do you gotta pee?
I kinda.
All right, ready?
Go!
Go!
I didn't know. Oh, I didn't know if this was.
You're on the clock. Welcome to Nerd Episode 2 with our special guest, Chair.
Chair is a very dark and sordid type.
Cheers.
But no, if you guys are here, if you guys are just tuning in, this is the Nerd Talk Show. Nerd is a community. You can catch us at www.nerd-community.com. All right, this is a talk show, but this talk show is one of the productions put on by the nerd community. We do a lot of online role-playing stuff, live broadcast. I run a weekly show. I'm starting a YouTube series for another show, and it's all gameplay and it's all role-playing stuff with stories and characters and stuff you can follow. But this is also a community for people who want to talk about stuff like what's going on here. Or if you're looking for groups to play in, there's an LFG forum for that. So by all means, like if you're enjoying the conversation, hit up the nerd community website. And that's our time for plugging, because Plutofaerie is back, the speediest peer known to man. Ladies and gentlemen.
I got a beer, too.
Wow, super fast.
How do you play a character with 0 charisma?
That's a systemic question. In the system that you're playing, what does the 0 charisma represent?
Yes.
Chair.
Okay, so, role-playing. How to be a good character on the topic of role-playing. Alright, so... I added something here, and I'd like to tackle this first, like, as the show went on, and that's playing an asshole character. Because this requires some finesse. I've seen this done so poorly so many times.
Oh, man, this comes back to the whole pissing people off thing.
It really is. Like, that's...
Grant, now fuck off.
No?
I don't want to talk about this.
Okay, yeah, alright. When you're playing a character who is an asshole, first off, you understand that being an asshole is a valid character concept.
No.
But one.
Sorry, nothing bad is ever allowed to happen.
I know, right?
Never.
Number one, is that assholes aren't very well liked by people. And so if people don't like your character and there is character conflict, you need to understand that's what you're getting into. Nobody just mouths off and has negative shit to say all the time and then is liked by people. Right? That's the character you're getting into playing, and you need to understand that's what you're going to play. So please don't roll an asshole character at any table and then be pissed when people don't like you.
Pissed when people don't like you, yeah.
That said, it can be done so that you evoke the ire of characters and not players, and the advice I've already given this session, this show, was break into third person when your character's being an asshole. Specify that your character is doing things as you narrate it. Don't say, you're an asshole and I hate you. I'm talking as my character. Don't do that. Say, my character gives you this disgusted look and says, seriously, you're a jerk. Like, when that happens, just when you describe it and you step out of your character when he is going to be an asshole, make certain that you are describing your character doing things, not doing things as your character. And the reason I say you should do this in this case is because this really does help avoid the recipient of your assholery feel as though this is in character, and they can react similarly. And if two people will step out of their character and describe their characters being fuckwads at each other, you will have some seriously intense play, and it can get really good and really fun. But the more you increase the odds of people taking it personally, the more likely you are to actually get in the way of the game being fun by having your character be an asshole. Plutes?
I've never been a fan of asshole characters, but you can guess why they're assholes. And that's why I said Squeegee's right about the whole. It's something that I wish I had learned earlier. The whole, hey, my character does this versus just blurting it out, because that is what gets you in trouble. That is where the conflict comes from, the actual interpersonal conflict. But asshole characters can be fun. I'm more a fan of the sporadic assholery, as I like to call it, where your character just makes the dumbest fucking decision for the party ever, and your party can't stop it, and you were kind of an asshole, and you have to work for the rest of the adventure to make up for it.
Right.
That's a fun angle.
And what you're pursuing there, what you're definitely pursuing there, is the story of your character suffering the consequences and having to make up with the party. And what you actually want to play there is your character making it up to the party and being forgiven. Yeah.
It's like, wait, no, I'm not actually this humongous asshole here. So I'm more a fan. I don't think I've ever dealt with the complete asshole character, because I think I'd punch them.
What was the character's name, Pook? I played the devil.
Yeah, you played the devil.
I played the character, like, it was Gods Among Us. Laurel might remember his name. But I played the Devil, and the Devil was a good dad, and he was a flaming asshole because he was the fucking devil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that you can't play, but most of the campaigns I've run, like I've never run an evil campaign because I just can't bring myself to do it. Like every time I play a video game, I can't do the evil campaign. I have to be good. I have to save the world. And that is the thing that I'm inexperienced with. I will admit this. I'm inexperienced with full-fledged asshole characters. I'm experienced with those asshole moments where a character makes a decision and decides to walk into a portal without the rest of her party, and they have to go follow her, and now she realizes that she's a seagull and is like, oh, I'm an asshole. Like that kind of shit. Those are the moments that I've had to deal with, but I've never actually had to deal with
somebody in chat just called out Levi and Belial.
Mm-hmm.
The party in the game in question is up against the Lord of Lies, a greater demon. The forces of heaven have in this scene said, I ain't fucking touching this. That's what the party is up against. Right? And Levi walks over to the pentagram in the middle of the floor.
And starts smearing blood.
Smears his blood on it. And then recalls from a cultist they had killed in a previous adventure what he should chant, and starts chanting it. His description was, I wanted to open up a portal and maybe send Belial back through it. This was the dumbest thing a character has ever done at my game table in the history of anything I have ever run, ever.
I thought it was fantastic. Hey, you know what? Let's go to this pinnacle. Let's smear a whole blood. Let's do this. Let's do this, guys.
You know what happened when he did that? Belial fell over dead. At the end of the adventure, though, several scenes later, it turned out Belial had been possessing Levi and was just waiting for a new host. And Levi is the reason Belial walks the earth now.
That's fantastic. That's a good ass. No.
Okay,
sorry.
So I've seen
space.
another side of characters being an asshole and it not meshing well. We talked about like where people feel like the player might be being an asshole directly towards another player if they don't clearly, specify. My character says, or my character does. Now, the other side of it is that you'll get people that will say, well, yeah, he's playing an asshole character, but he's taking it too far. I don't believe his character would do X, but he's having his character do X just to be an asshole. This isn't the character being an asshole. This is the player being an asshole.
Ooh, when the player can't tell the difference between the player being an asshole and the character being an asshole.
Like, yes, this character does do some questionable things, but I've seen them played in such a way where they're smart enough to know that they wouldn't do it at the werewolf moot. And then the player says, no, my character's an asshole. He would do it there too. And they're like, no, you actually wouldn't. And so you get into this argument where other players are telling this person how to play their character because they think that the player is just trying to get assholery across.
In those scenarios, I wholeheartedly feel it's the GM's job to decide whether or not a player is playing a character or if the player is mucking with the game. I have a zero-tolerance policy on players mucking with my games, and if I find people who are...
Does it fuck with the game?
If people are using their character to fuck with the game...
Soapbox?
You're out. You're out. No questions asked. You're out. I'm done. I'm not fucking around with that.
And this is literally like the law amongst GMs, is if you're fucking with my story purposefully because you want to get under my skin, congratulations, you did. Get the fuck out of my group.
And that said, like I have absolutely no problem with characters literally blowing my story apart or like completely reshaping the game when it's legitimately the character doing that and the character is not a tool for the player to do that. Levi summoning Belial is an example.
Right. So how do you deal with the conflict of with players basically saying, oh no, the character isn't actually a dick, the player's just using the character as a mouthpiece?
This is something that's a little more tricky to handle in your venue, Pook, because you do online role-playing with a lot of people in a room, and there's a lot more...
Yeah, and a lot of...
I feel that as a player, if this occurs, you should talk to your GM because I feel that part of the GM's responsibility is herding cats and making people behave and get along, and people management is part of the job. And if your GM is letting this fly and not stepping in, then what he's saying is that is, like, effectively he's sponsoring that behavior at his table and saying that it's cool, and you need to consider if that's something you want to be doing. If somebody else is telling you your character's not an asshole, just you're being the dick, then that person is actively going out of their way to try and declare that you don't have an IC-OOC line, and they're pinning all of this assholery on you. And that's a player-to-player conflict, not a thing about the role-playing itself, and player-to-player conflicts need to be resolved between players.
I have an interesting point, and Laurelverse from chat brought this up. Lawful good. Those assholes over there. Those lawful good assholes. Sometimes the assholes aren't always evil, and sometimes they're not always.
I think what you're describing is colloquially known as lawful stupid.
Lawful stupid.
Well, there's lawful stupid and there's lawful asshole. Like, oh my god.
There really is. Like, I'm just lawful good. We're gonna chop this child's hands off because they were stealing. Okay, look, I understand that's the law, but like, seriously.
That is, and you know what? That is the type of shit I like exploring that stuff in my games. I currently have an adventure going where the players just realized. The players in a mage game just found a guy who has manufactured multiple awakenings. But the actions he is taking to do so are causing horrible fates to fall on innocents who are unconnected to the process. Is that okay? What's going like that? But that's something that's going on that needs to be explored. But like the you should be able to feel out, like, are you actually creating an interesting conflict that players want to play, or are you just being the guy who's finding reasons not to do stuff, which is something else we're going to talk about here in just a second.
Ooh.
No, I'm neither of those guys.
Because like the character who is so lawful good that it causes problems for the party can be a lot of fun to play if people want to play that. But if that's not what
chaotic stupid exists too.
Yep.
But I just mentioned, you know, Pluto mentioned not doing an all bad guy game or an all asshole game because she's got the, you know, wants to play the character and save the world.
I gotta save the world.
Now here's the really interesting thing is that good guys can be incredibly asshole-ish.
Not only can good guys be incredibly asshole-ish, but they can make fantastic villains.
You can totally play the save the world character. That's a complete and total
dick. I won't save the world unless you pay me 5,000 gil. What? Give me 5,000 gold and I'll save the world. But
I'm going to save the world, and I know the way to do it. And you fuckers in my party, you keep fucking up.
You know, Hitler wanted to save the world.
The character that Jen is playing in my Sunday Mage game that I keep referencing. One of the primary dynamics in that party, she has saved lives. She is a major force in what's going on. She would save the world if she had to. And all she ever had, like, her interactions with her party consist of her constantly turning around and going, "Are you retarded?" Every time they do anything, she is yelling at them for being stupid. In her defense, 50% of the time she's doing this, it's justified. The other 50% of it is her being an asshole. But she is a hero. She's an anti-hero. And so that can happen. So asshole characters.
So yeah, the twistedness, getting the good twisted. Yep. Once it starts, or even just like I said, the paladin that, you know, chop it off the hand of somebody that stole something. But what if he was poor? What if he was just trying to feed his children? You know, there's the dilemmas of you're kind of being an asshole right now. I know you got a law to uphold, but you're kind of being an asshole.
And it's total and it's not that that's an illegitimate play, but you need to know that if you're playing an asshole character, you are injecting that in. You need to know whether or not the party and the players at the table want to play that with you.
Right. This guy is only playing asshole characters because he thinks it's so edgy.
Oh, it's so funny. Look at me go.
Oh my god, look at him. Like,
LOL, troll face.
Look at his butt. It is so big.
Oh my god. Sorry.
Okay, so asshole characters, and again, if people are asking questions or making comments, Pook, I'm hoping you're copying stuff down so we can, because there will be a Q&A at the end of the show.
I've only seen a couple questions. Like, there's a lot of good commentary.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I'm like reacting to the comments about how Laurelverse mentioned, not all assholes are bad. Like,
right. Okay,
they turn out to be lawful good, chaotic good,
If there's been some really good comments, we'll come back to them, but I would like to keep things moving forward, because we got an hour left. And we spent about an hour on each section. But we've been pretty much on point with an hour each section.
We haven't.
Okay, so, we've covered, your character does not exist outside the things you say. How to be a good player at the table role-playing. Character does not exist.
Psychic vibrations?
Yeah, okay, so this ties into a lot of stuff we've already talked about, where, you can be so in character, you could be so in-depth with your character's psychology, and you know exactly what's going through their head, and you know what they're feeling, and you're so in it, but all anybody ever sees is what you say and do as your character. They're never going to get that depth. They're never going to see it. A player that I have that recently learned this is Matt, Levi Waterhouse. If you go back and you watch the very first few episodes of Darkness Rising, Levi is just this ridiculous, absurd, crazy, insane, like, what the fuck, stupid are you doing? And then we realized...
Yeah, put a tracer on my sister.
Yeah, put a tracer on my sister, right? And by that point, that was about where the change started to happen, where, like, sure, the character's doing ridiculous things, but suddenly because he is explaining that as an older brother, he goes berserk and makes no sense when his sister is involved. Or, whenever he explains that, he has XYZ and he's really jealous of the people who have a lot of money, and so he's gonna be a little out of his way asshole, right? Like, when he just states that fact and keeps playing, the character comes to life and we all understand who he is. But if Matt never said that, we would never know it.
Right.
Because we couldn't pick it up from... Put a trace on my sister, please.
Right. But see, the thing is that you would have probably, if he hadn't explained that angle, you probably would have picked it up as he's just kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
right?
Faith figured it out pretty fast. The whole, you're freaking out because your family is involved.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to figure this out, but we need a plan. You can't just go off all willy-nilly.
Or Milli Vanilli.
No, but I noticed that about Matt, is that he picked it up, and you bring up a good point, EvilSqueegee, about how saying why you're doing stuff. Tell the audience why you're doing stuff. Well, my character is curious, so you bet your ass I'm gonna lift up the fucking trunk of the car. Player me knows for a fact that I shouldn't be fucking doing this.
Yep,
shouldn't be.
It's
I should not be doing this.
It's not even really a metagaming thing so much as it is, you use the word audience there, right? At your average game table, there's not an audience, there are other players, but those other players in that GM are your audience.
Yes.
Like, you have to communicate to them the story of what your character is feeling and doing and thinking. And the more you tell them, the more in-depth your character becomes for them.
I am fortunate, aka blessed, in the fact that I play in the venue I play in. And the reason I say that is because I am now given the space and opportunity to include those sorts of things in the narrative.
Yep.
I'm not saying that kind of play doesn't take place at the table, but it's a lot easier to write into your post than it is to stop and say, as part of my curious nature, I am now going to fuck over the party.
You say that? I'm actually going to disagree with you there. I'm going to say that it is a lot easier to sum it up in a couple of sentences and spit it out and keep playing. However, you have less practice doing that because you play in a text-based format, and you've been playing that way so long.
Yours text-based.
Yeah, he plays a lot of text-based. So
I was gonna say,
and because you can write in the first person and include all that stuff in your narrative, you can describe it in your post, and it doesn't jar anything. Especially since you've been doing that for how many years? But for example, on my Sunday game, like, people will point out, virtue, vice, insecurity, conditions, and it doesn't break the flow. And they'll even, like, they'll go off and they'll stomp off and then they'll explain a little bit of what's going on with their character, and it's not difficult to do. It's just that we have more practice doing it than you would at the table, for example, because you've been doing it for so long.
Yeah, the text thing is not incorrect. I want to point that out.
It's by no means is it incorrect, but I'm saying that I don't actually think the statement that it's easier to do in text is
depends on how fast you type.
Is a full take.
How fast can you speak versus how fast can you type?
I know, right?
Well, yeah, but yeah, I get that, and I get the, I guess even when I see, like, when I participate in tabletop games, I see some, but I don't see nearly as much exposition.
Yep. Yep. No, people feel a lot more natural with exposition in the written stuff than they do in the verbal. For people, as somebody, I played in both realms, and I have played with people who had origins in tabletop and origins in writing. The people who have origins in writing, in written online play, you'd think would have an easier time with verbal exposition, but they don't. And the flip side is the people who come from the tabletop, where you have to sum up your character in a few sentences here or there to keep things flowing because it's conversational back and forth, quick. You'd think that they would have a better handle on characterizing their characters in fewer words when they moved it, but they don't. Like they're two entirely different beasts on this specific topic, but the core of it is, regardless of what you're playing, text or verbal,
use what's appropriate.
If you don't tell people something, they're never going to know. And they can't play with you if they're never going to know. Like...
And I'm imagining you still somewhat explain your actions. Although maybe you don't have to do it as much because you can kind of... See, I guess when you're speaking, you have to evoke the emotion through your voice. But when you're typing, you have to evoke the emotion through your words, which is somewhat, a bit more difficult.
It's a different skill. It's a different skill. But I would also say that, like... At the table, you don't have to use your voice. You don't have to show. You can tell. Like, I think that show, don't tell is one of the most insidiously presented pieces of writing wisdom there is. Because telling isn't bad. It's just that showing is better. If you can't show and you don't tell, it doesn't exist.
It's show and tell.
Go ahead, Bill. Sorry, I cut you off there.
Yeah, no, I'm not like, I wasn't saying that to I didn't want to like lessen either format because I think they.
Oh yeah.
It's just there are times where I think sometimes you have to be you end up being responsible for being a little bit more exact when you're writing the tone of voice as opposed to using the tone of voice.
Yep.
You actually sit there and declare exactly what tone of voice that is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I will, because man, sometimes spoken word is just.
Right.
Versus, you know.
Like when she's like, "Hey, asshole." Wait. Do you actually think I'm an asshole? No, you know.
Yeah. No. I didn't mean it like that. Yeah.
Like we had a really good character archetype that it sees play at almost every table all the time. We have it in Darkness Rising. I have it in my Sunday game. I have it all over the place, and that is the character who doesn't tell people anything. Jack is a good example of this character in Darkness Rising. Jen is a good example of this character in the Sunday game. And these types of characters, one of their core traits is that they don't say everything. They internalize so much, and they keep everybody else at arm's distance. But I see people play these characters all the time, and all they do is not share things and keep people at arm's length. And they never actually play stuff and tell the audience what's going on, while their character doesn't tell the other characters what's going on. There's this disconnect where, because the character wouldn't communicate this and the character would keep this internal, the player does that to the other players. And in order to play a secretive, quiet, arm's length, tell nobody anything, dead man tell no tale type guy, you have to differentiate what the audience knows from what the character knows, because the audience has to know in order to like the guy at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, that's also like the amnesiac, you know? Just because you're starting a character with that's an amnesiac doesn't mean your character doesn't have a history.
Faith.
Maybe you don't. Maybe you as the player don't even personally know it. In some situations, the GM comes up with it.
That's what we're doing right now.
But somebody comes up with it.
Yes, exactly.
And totally no, yeah.
And when you play the character that is, secretive, they should have a story that they still tell people to keep people away from the real information.
And the players should probably know enough to perceive that happening.
Right.
Even if they don't know the exact information, they should know that your character is the type to tell a story to keep people off. Right.
I think what's rough about that is sometimes you want to say, well, my character does this, but not in front of the other PCs. And it also plays to the group of, okay, well, who can separate player knowledge versus character knowledge?
Metagaming is a topic that I am willing to tackle in an entirely different show because it is a huge and varied topic. But no,
then I will not elaborate on that, but that can be an issue for the communication.
At a glance, as far as it relates to this topic, you should know what game everybody wants to play, and you should play to that game. On the Sunday game, we were we really thrived on the idea of having the immersive experience of if your character wasn't there, they didn't know it, you don't know it. And I wound up pulling players aside and dropping them into different channels on TeamSpeak and having scenes that only one player was privy to. And it really did hit the nail on the head. Like when the characters would butcher information, unintentionally communicating to each other what they'd found and mislead each other. And oh my god, they thought the victim was actually the bad guy for a huge chunk of play because it was so butchered when it came out of that character's face after what they had seen.
That's fantastic.
And that was fantastic, and it made that first-person experience of, like, what do you mean my best friend died, right?
It's like Levi sputtering.
Thing. Yeah, and it was great, but we've pulled back on that game because so much of the game started being one person at a time that 2/3 of the players sitting at the game for 3 hours once a week was them just sitting around talking sports because the GM was in another room with a player.
See, that's no fun. Yeah.
You should really be able to work with the other players and say, I want to tell the story of my character successfully keeping the secret. I want the secret to almost be discovered so that my character can scramble and cover it up. But I don't actually want the secret to be discovered because that would ruin the fun of what I have set out to play. And the other players, including the GM, can go, we can work with you on that. Right?
Yeah.
And now you don't have to be passing notes to the GM and constantly pulling yourself aside. If that's how your group wants to handle it.
Right.
On the flip side, if your group wants to take somebody aside or pass notes back and forth, cool. I have actually sat at a game table where nobody said anything out loud for an hour and a half, and everybody's passed notes because all the characters were being super sneaky, didn't want anybody to know anything. And that was fine because that's what the players wanted to do, and that's how that group wanted to handle that. But that specific topic of, I don't want the other players to metagame stuff, is actually a trust issue you need to establish with the other players.
That's advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
That is all about your relationship with the other players.
I am hilarious.
Pook, do you have any input on that topic?
I guess my input on the topic is I'm leaving the show because clearly she's doing a better job. No.
But you just got back, Pook. I miss
you. So the original topic here is still that your character isn't anything you don't like. Your character is only what you say, right?
Right.
Yes.
Like if the character doesn't if it's not actually spoken, it's not your
character. How does anybody know about it?
Right.
Right.
You have to communicate. You have to tell.
Yeah. I think you should also be mindful of the fact that your character isn't also what you say sometimes. Sometimes you can make some pretty grand claims for what your character is, and they're not.
Okay, yeah, and again, in an online format, that's a lot easier to run across than in a verbal format. But I totally get what you mean.
Well, it is kind of funny because I've seen it at a tabletop where this character is supposed to come into play being capable of doing these things, and the dice will not ever let them do it. Yeah, like I don't mean so much as like the player making bad claims as much as like the game just doesn't allow that character.
Right. Where you set out to play something.
Right now. He keeps setting them off.
Huh?
Yep.
Sorry. I was gonna say, do you want me to go? I was gonna say, no, we have a rogue that literally is having trouble disarming traps. Like, he should be able to do it.
Yeah,
He's just probably like 2s and 3s, and he literally has not disarmed like any of the 10 traps that have been put in front of him.
And there's a couple of ways to handle that. If the player really does want to play the expert trapsmith, then they can work with the GM and say, hey, look, the dice have been fucking me over, and this isn't what I want to play. Can we make that a story element? Like, can we discover that my character was hexed and it wasn't his fault that this was happening? Or you know, can it be that, you know, like or the flip side is, hey, I set up to play this expert trapsmith. Can I shift my points around on the sheet because he hasn't disarmed a trap yet, and I think it'd be really fun to play the guy who just thinks that he's a master trapsmith.
They actually made a flaw for this in the new Vampire, where your character thinks they're really good at something and they're not. Like, your character actually thinks it has like 2 or 3 more dots and a skill than they actually have.
Right.
And that's the flaw. You can actually take a character creation where your character thinks they're an expert and they just keep fucking it up.
Yep. But
hilarious.
then there's the part where, like, to a certain extent, like, you know what? Matt should never play a seductress. Matt, the look on Pluto's face when I said that. There's a reason for that.
He would accidentally seduce the opposite sex of whatever his character was interested in.
Like, Matt would
every
be
time.
so far, like, Matt as a player just does not have any grasp of that character type to play. He would, even if he built it correctly and the sheet was that, like, Matt could never play that because it doesn't matter how many times he says his character is a sexy character, like, he just doesn't know how to play.
It would be great.
And it would bot, like...
Hey, Matt, this entire podcast is a sex joke.
Yeah, seriously, right?
This entire one.
But like Matt playing a seductress is just not his forte because he wouldn't be able to evoke that. And that's not to say that you should only play things you're good at, because I feel that knowledge, skills, and social skills exist for people to play way outside of their comfort zones. I know nothing about cars. I know nothing about guns. You know what Tracy is a nut job for? Cars and guns.
Cars and guns.
She loves them. I don't know anything about them. All right, and dice should be there, but that's only going to cover a certain extent, because if you can't evoke your character in the players' minds around you, like, I'm sorry, but you're playing whatever, like, what you're playing is what everybody perceives your character as. That's why it's so important that your character doesn't exist outside of what you say. So if you're going to play something you're really bad at in real life, like, if you're going to play a genius and you know you're just a dumb fuck, right? Just be like, my character's a genius. Just always saying how smart your character is, roll some dice, and then say, what does a genius do here, right? And learn to play around it. But still, you have to constantly tell. Like, I feel that most role players should be told, don't worry about showing. Tell. Just to get the ball rolling.
Even if you need to work on the art of bullshitting, tell.
Yep. Like, just
I'm gonna gargle this thing, like, instead of Google it, you know, I'm gonna do this ridiculous stuff.
I'm gonna make a GUI in Visual Basic really quick to track the hacker's IP.
Yeah, like, seriously, just like blah 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 blah. And
your computers, you know,
and just constantly saying, hey, I'm good at X, I'm gonna do X, I'm gonna do my X thing, I'm gonna do my X thing here and there and there. Not to the point where it's the only thing you ever say, but constantly telling people that this trait exists is the only way it's going to really exist, especially if you don't have that trait as a person. Okay, so, there's, your character doesn't exist outside of the things you have said. Talked asshole characters.
Yes.
Let's talk about doing stuff.
My character wouldn't do that.
Okay, so let's go that way. Let's talk this one, alright? My character wouldn't do that. If I hear that too much from the same person, I stop playing with them. The sentence, my character wouldn't do that, is very rarely uttered as a interesting character choice. There are choices and refusals that characters that they can make that really shine a light on what's going on. I don't want to talk about spoilers, but there are all kinds of moments where heroes have been given the choice to rescue person A or person B, and who they choose, or their refusal to play that game, is a big deal and a moment of tension and drama in the story. On the flip side, that's not what we're talking about. My character wouldn't do that. When you hear somebody at the game table say that, what, like, hypothetical Plutofaerie, give me an example of somebody saying, my character wouldn't do that.
Okay, a hypothetical of a character not doing, you know, and even if it would be their character would do that. Well, we've given a choice. We've given a character a choice of breaking into this facility and rescuing a prisoner, or doing a quest for somebody, doing a quest for the leader of the prison. I'm just making shit up. Doing a quest for the leader of the prison, and they'll give you the prisoner. But you don't know the charges that were brought against the prisoner, if the prisoner's even guilty, and they won't tell you. What do you do? Do you want to break out the prisoner? Do you want to, and the prisoner, when you get him, is going to be sent to be killed.
Okay.
What do you do? And a character who just won't play ball and say, well, I'm not going to rescue the prisoner. I'm just going to leave him there to rot and let him pick it up. Okay, that entire adventure's done. Congratulations.
Right. The goal of the RPG is to do stuff, not to not do stuff. And I feel like the protagonist in a story, which is your character, should be based around the stuff that they do, not the stuff that they don't do. And being so focused on the negative of what they won't do means that you're sitting down to play the game with people, and what you've spent all of your effort and time building is a list of things that you won't do at the table.
Yeah.
Like, here's a list of games I won't play. Let's play. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poke?
Yeah. Like, I think that phrase alone is like, I'm gonna say this word, and everybody's just gonna cringe at me. But I think that phrase is toxic.
Cringy. Oh, okay.
Dude, I love calling people toxic. For the record, it brings me back to my Captain Planet days.
Yeah,
you're being toxic.
Yeah, I think the phrase is toxic. I can't see that phrase used in a way at all
where it
would be productive, ever.
And instead of my character doesn't do that, instead of saying my character doesn't do that, find a different way to react to the situation then. If your character wouldn't rescue the prisoner, well then would you help with the execution?
Right, or like okay, so here's a good one.
Or would you break into the archives and figure out what this person was put in jail for and figure out more about that angle? Like instead of not doing something, maybe try to
think outside the box, come up with a new solution that wasn't prevented you. Here's another thing. Story, as I've explained before, one of the core pieces of story. No conflict, no story. You know what a great conflict is? My character hates having to do this. My character would never do this, and yet here they are doing it because I found a reason for my character to not like do it against their will. The bottom line when you're writing a story, okay, being an author of any kind, role-playing, writing, you name it, is the art of contriving excuses. Because you, as the writer, could just say, problem solved. Why isn't the problem solved? Okay, because you came up with an excuse.
The D&D game, the Dragonstar game we play.
Yep.
Is probably, actually the entirety of it has been a series of events in which my character would never do what he's done. Like, the entire game so far has been that. Because my character was from a medieval world with no outside space contact and was the son of a farmer that was going to be a farmer. And we have blown up suns and taken on zombie half-dragons and had people killed by werewolves and then pieced back together and resurrected. And, like, I pretty much at any turn could have been like, yeah, my character's a farmer. He's got no interest in doing this. He would never
in my Sunday Mage game, Jen's character that Jen plays has a destiny merit. She is destined, fated to do something. She hates that. She rails against it. She doesn't want to do any of this shit. And a large portion of my core story is this character's destiny. And she keeps getting shoved into stuff. She doesn't constantly. Coincidence will work against her, and she winds up doing this shit she hates doing. She doesn't want a single fucking thing to do with it. That's the character. And Jen, the player, playing this character, absolutely loves finding reasons her character will go, fine, right?
It's like that joke about the anime character, like the little girl is born with pink hair, and so it's like, oh, she's a main character, and she literally spends the entire time trying to avoid being the main character and avoid all these fucking plot points, but they still follow her around.
Yep. And it's Don't tell me what your character won't do.
Mm-hmm.
Give me an excuse for your character to do that when they don't want to. I love it when the character doesn't want to do something and does it anyways because it's really interesting. It gives you the chance to express who your character is. Why am I doing this? Why is he doing this? What makes him do that? That's the stuff that really makes the character interesting. If the character is so...
I'm just like, my character wouldn't do that. Okay, so maybe he should discuss with the party why he has a problem with this. Okay. Oh, look, he didn't win the party over. They're going to do it anyway.
Anyway.
Right.
Go sit in your corner of shame while the rest of the party goes and does the thing, or come along with.
Yeah, and like, you're fine if the group at the table is going to go engage in the adventure the GM put forth, and your character refuses to, and you won't find a reason to work with the party, which is one of the things a good player does, because they're working with the players at the table. If your response is, okay, I'm not going to play this adventure, that's cool. But you're not going to play this adventure.
That's okay. Yeah, that's totally fine. If you don't want to play an adventure, do not be forced into playing an adventure you don't want to do. But know that, number one, you're not getting any of the loot. And number two, you're not getting any of the experience.
And it might actually come back to bite your character in the long run when they go on another adventure or someone got hurt in the last
There's a side quest they picked up, and now they're further in the dungeon.
But like, it's more like, if you don't want to play, that's fine, but you showed up at the table to play, and if it is more important to you that your character does not do this thing that you have determined your character will not do, and you don't want to tell the story of your character disliking it, doing it, then what you are saying is that you don't want to play. Because that's what playing would be. Find reasons to do stuff. Don't find reasons to stop stuff. It ties right back into being that rules lawyer asshole. The rules lawyer asshole is caught blocking cool things.
Sometimes you don't need to find a reason. I don't know why I did that. I just felt like I should have done it. And you're sitting there confused about your character's motivation for doing it, but I don't know why I did that.
Maybe your character didn't know why they did that.
Yeah, I legitimately had one of my characters, she was neutral evil, started out neutral evil. So, you know, totally for herself, but I'm going along with these two bumblefucks because they're getting me money, right?
Yeah.
So, and we come across a cave where there's someone's trying to reanimate a dragon, and there's a gem in between the lich and the dragon, and here's the gem. And my rogue, this character, literally pulls out her dagger and throws her dagger at the gem. There was no personal gain to be gotten out of this gem, and it turned out the two good guys that she's been traveling with have actually started to change her world view.
Right.
And she did it because she was saving the world, and she's never thought about it that way.
Right.
So, like, you don't even need a reason. You can figure out the reason later.
Yep. Okay, so finding excuses is
Find an excuse why to do it, even if you just grumble the whole time. Just sit there in the back. Fuck this shit. I don't want to be here.
All right. So this moves into
I'm supposed to be here today.
This moves into doing stuff. Proactive, reactive, and inactive. There are, as far as being a good player at the table, in order of being a good player, my take on it, from least good player to best good player, is the inactive player, the reactive player, the proactive player. What that means, an inactive player...
hold on, let him explain.
The inactive player doesn't do anything. They tag along and there is nothing. Their character does not contribute to the story. It doesn't contribute to overcoming the obstacles. You're just there. You just show up. The inactive player is the one who's fucking tweeting away on their phone or whatever. Okay. The reactive player is the one who, to reference our previous episode, is there only to receive story. The reactive player is the one who only does stuff to describe their character's reaction to things. The proactive player is the one who does stuff. And that stuff may be in response to a thing. I mean, ultimately speaking, the GM provides a conflict and your character reacts to that conflict. But what I mean here is the proactive person is the one who reaches out and interacts with the game world and interacts with the GM and the other players and does stuff. Whereas the reactive one is the one who will play their character, describe their character's feelings, but not really do anything. And then the inactive player is the one who barely even does that. Strive to be proactive.
The proactive player goes out to the marketplace and buys a tiny wooden hippo. Why? Because fuck you, that's why.
Go ahead, Pook.
But yeah.
I can see the thinking going on in your face.
I actually think that a table full of proactive players might be a bad thing.
It would be terrible. That's why I'm saying, like, you should have proactive and reactive. You should have a little bit of both, I would think. Or the different characters who know when to be proactive versus when to be reactive.
I know in a lot of tabletop situations I've been very reactive myself. But yeah, I'm almost thinking, you know, that getting a bunch of proactive players together might have them going in too many different directions.
This goes back to the talking stick and taking your turn.
It is the talking stick.
And I don't prescribe being proactive to the point where you become a bad player for doing something else wrong. Right. I myself would love to have a bunch of players who do stuff as a GM. The more I can count on my players to do at the table, the less I have to do for them, and the less I have to, like, it's not the less I have to prepare, but the more I can count on, like, here's a conflict, here's a basic scenario, NPC wants XYZ, XYZ is behind element OP, adventure, right? And I don't have to write in all of this extra stuff because I know my players are gonna do things, right?
Right. Yeah, I could see reactive being harmful in the way that you ask, okay, now you need to retrieve this gem.
Yeah.
It's right before you, behind this laser wall, da-da-da-da-da. What do you do? And the person is like, well, I turn to the person that comes up with the plans.
Right,
and ask them what they do.
And ultimately speaking, there really only has to be one proactive player if your group is good about working a plan together and then executing, and that's fine. But what I mean by reactive isn't like waiting for something to happen in the story before they do something. When you do something, you are proactive. Even if you were doing something in response. I'm not talking about a responsive player, I'm talking about a reactive player whose only input at the table is that makes my character feel great. Or, you know, their character occasionally comments and stuff, but they never actually really do anything. Right?
You know, though, I wonder if this... Oh gosh darn it. I had a really cool point and now it's gone. I was wondering if it goes along with the spotlight thing of where everybody should share the spotlight and you should give everybody the chance to be the proactive player.
Yes.
If they want to be the proactive player.
Right.
You know?
That's a spotlight thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. Like, everybody talking over each other and clamoring to proactively do something is ignoring the talking stick and ignoring the spotlight. Everybody should have the spotlight. The proactive player is the one who actually takes advantage of their spotlight and does something. When 4 sessions go by and your character has not done a single fucking thing for 4 sessions.
Given and I was gonna say proactive doesn't necessarily literally need to be like making the plan, but like speaking up and saying, hey, maybe we should do this, and or like, hey, maybe we should add this on, or
proactive and reactive in this case actually could probably be expressive and introverted.
Okay.
Because your example of the reactive person, and I've seen this person, I actually kind of was in the first mage game where I played chill. I was a little bit too much of this person, and I actually acknowledged that because I was a little overwhelmed. Where the what you get, the response that you get from the introverted person, or introspective in this case, is this bomb just went off, taking out these people with it, and the cops are going to be here soon. What do you do? And the response is, that sucks that all those people died.
Right. That's not what you're doing. And like, in the game that you referenced with chill, right? I mean, there was a lot of like introspective, reactive stuff, but if I had the chance to sit down and be like, all right, chill, here's an NPC to interact with, here's a scenario for you to work with, right? There were times where you did proactively do stuff. And that's like when the spotlight was on you, there were times when you took advantage, there were times when you didn't, but you're able to see which times you did and which times you didn't.
Right, yeah.
And the better player is almost always the person who, when it is their turn for the spotlight, will do stuff.
And there were clearly times where, not like to just turn the show into explaining that, where I didn't. because I'm still not super familiar with the Mage the Awakening rules.
Yeah.
I basically didn't do these things that we're talking about now. So I didn't actually have an idea of what I could do in those situations. And I was sitting at a table with people that knew the rules so intimately that they were thinking of creative ways to use them to do things they wouldn't normally do. And that's what I was paired with. And that's not saying that was anybody's fault.
No, totally, yeah. And like, mages are really
here, like, can I use this forces to knock it, like this whole Rube Goldberg machine going on over here?
Yep.
And I'm like, can I summon a fireball?
Yeah, can I just cast a fireball?
Right, yeah, and like that table,
these guys
like
sound like they got this shit handled. You know,
I will totally admit, like that was a game where like the environment in the meta of that game was very poorly executed, because you were in a position where you were intimidated by the other player's knowledge of the system instead of being put into situations where you had the hands-on experience to start figuring it out yourself.
Right.
And that was the table where I initiated the no coaching rule, which is another version of the talking stick. The no coaching rule is if it's Frank's turn,
I know how to play
up.
rogue, and you're playing a rogue.
Because I'll admit, I had some really great role play in that, like the stuff that Chill did with Jin's character. My God, yes. But I never felt like I got to the point where I was actually playing Chill at the table because I felt like I didn't have the knowledge to actually allow myself to play Chill.
Yep.
And so I can definitely see the points of know the rules but don't know them to the extreme.
Yeah, know the rules and don't
what you say.
Know the rules, don't argue them, and respect the spotlight. Like a lot of this stuff would have probably reversed that situation, and that's not just to say that like there's stuff you could have done different. There's stuff everybody at that table could have.
Right. Yeah, no.
So I don't mean to be like you were the problem. No. Okay.
No. It's good to analyze it because I think that's probably my closest experience with breaking some of these rules that we're now.
That's the only time I've ever been a bad player.
I've always been.
The only time I've been naughty.
The rules are more like guidelines.
Yeah. I mean, this is their suggestions.
They're suggestions. I actually wanted to ask, like, what would you consider this? So you've sat down at the table, and okay, combat. What I attack. That I would consider an inactive. Now, okay, I would like to use this special class move. I figure that now proactive in my eyes, reactive is I would like to use the special move. Inactive is just I just attack. I hate
combat.
Pook is not a combat player, it's true.
I play it, but I hate it. And the reason I hate it, especially at the table, is because people that will build themselves into I'm not going into the combat monkey things. I'm saying people that still build actually well-balanced characters and make good characters still only give themselves like one avenue in combat or two avenues in combat. And combat usually drags on longer.
Depending on the game and the rules,
have unique attacks for. And so it does, even when somebody starts out explaining things, it does start boiling down to I fire my gun.
Yeah.
I fire my gun.
Yep.
I've never seen a system with combat that provided enough options to keep it as interesting as the roleplay.
But I guess I'm saying, what if the person just starts off and I attack, and they haven't really.
They start there because
versus reactive is I attack and use my move, and the proactive is I attack and I want to punch the Yeti off the cliff.
Yeah. Okay, so
I want to use my move to punch the Yeti off the cliff. Like
what you're describing here is a really broad and complex topic that I really like. So I'm actually going to delve a little bit into the surface of this for a second here, and that is what Pook is describing is 3.5 skill list syndrome. Don't tell me as the GM, like if you want to make my goddamn day, don't tell me I power attack. Instead, tell me I want to fucking run this dude through with my sword as hard as I goddamn can, right?
Yeah.
Don't tell me I want to bull rush him off the cliff. Tell me, dude, can I knock him off? Like, can I kick him off? Right?
In this case, the proactive player isn't
dexterity.
Proactive. In this case, the proactive player isn't proactive. The proactive player is actually, once again, expressive or narrative.
Yeah.
Don't actually understanding the scenario that's playing out.
Okay.
And I feel that that's actually a problem you get. That's a problem you acquire as you become a more experienced role player. It's not there when you're a brand new dude. You don't have a list of things in your head that are silently eliminating all other options. You just want to know, hey, can I shove the dude off a cliff? And the new player, I just read an article by the angry GM, where he goes in a rant about stop mechanicsing yourself out of good ideas. Just come up with a cool idea and let the GM decide how the rules are supposed to play out, and don't.
Can my monk jump up and punch the beholder down into the ground? No? Okay.
Like,
I tried.
Like, describe.
Can I parry the airplane?
Role play the character, and this isn't to say that, like, you know, your tactical combat monkey players are at all doing anything incorrectly, because they're not, right? It's that you can declare what you want to do without having to rely on it sounding like you're playing a board game.
And that's the thing is that people really fall back to that.
Yeah, they do. And part of what you're describing there, Pook, is in the scenario you described, where like even people who start off really into it, really narrating their stuff, they fall back to I attack. By that point, the fight has gone on too long.
You remember how I got around that in Dusk? Remember, because we've actually had to talk about this before, where I was like, I don't care how you narrate the attack as long as it sticks to one dice roll and the same amount of damage. Where if you wanted to say that one roll to punch wasn't actually a punch, but a series of 3 punches, as long as you didn't mechanically change the damage or the roll, I didn't care.
Yeah, Aubrey used to punch people through walls.
Yeah.
It wasn't a special maneuver he had on his sheet. He made an attack, hit, did 4 damage, and then I described somebody getting punched through a wall.
Woohoo!
Whereas sometimes a tabletop, that would have, like, with the inactive players, they would have been like, okay, I throw a punch.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, if your players are like, there are some people who really get into, no, I want to attack, I want to move over here, I want to take this tactical stuff. That's great. And I myself, I really like the tactics of a fight, but there is a point where even I, as the tactic lover, will feel like, okay, now we have just turned this into a dice grind and I am no longer excited.
Yeah, the minute it turns into a dice grind, but like
I ran into that where like there's special fighting styles in this system too, and they'd have unique moves and stuff like that, and then people still say I do the name of the move, I do move name.
Yep, and if you've gotten to a point where your players and your GM are no longer like, yeah, what happens in the next round?
What happens next? Like,
as long as players are like, oh, what happens next? I'm in there, and I'll fudge the rules. I'll do whatever it takes to keep people be like, yeah, this is great. And one of the things I do the most is that I don't care how many hit points that mob has written down on its sheet. If the fight is dragged on too long, it took damage, that's dead. Like, I will shove the fight into ending. Hit points are
not rules.
Right. I will end the fight narratively, right, and I'll bring it to a close. If the party was gonna win, then cool. If the tension is over and things have just started to become like a meh, and it's starting to slow the fun down, and people aren't getting the satisfaction out of it anymore.
Right, and that's the thing is like you just run into combat where basically I might as well be picturing a turn-based RPG in my head, because that's what's happening. Like an early Final Fantasy is happening in my head, because they're just like punch.
Punch. Yep. Okay, it's your turn. Okay, punch. Okay, it's your turn. Okay, I care. Yeah.
Yep. Care. Okay.
Yeah. Meanwhile, my GM will be like, okay, the beholder just hit this motherfucker for 45 damage. Now what are you gonna do? Like,
okay, so I think
myself a little.
I think that pretty much covers all of the stuff we had on the notes for today's show. So at this point, we're gonna turn to the audience. If you guys have questions either for Plutofaerie or for me and Pook, or just for the show as a whole, it doesn't have to be related to being a good player. Maybe it's something that we said earlier that you wanted to talk a little more about, or maybe there's something new. Maybe you really like Pookachu's finger. Maybe you really like his finger.
Maybe
I do have a couple questions that were asked earlier as we were discussing, so these would be, I guess, on topic questions.
Yeah, so let's go. Let's open up with the ones that you saved as people are asking questions.
Now, Wyvern wasn't actually, I don't think he was asking to get an answer directly, but I still wanted to pick it up anyways. He said, is there really a difference between being good and being OP? When we were talking about knowing the rules and being good at knowing the rules. And
that's a complicated subject.
Yeah.
Because A, those two terms are very ill-defined, and B, they have to do more with the reasons players will sit down at the table. One of the first things you have to learn to accept, if you're going to be a grown-up and you're going to play RPGs with grown-ups, you have to realize there is no such thing as an invalid reason to sit at the table. People who like to play super narrative versus people who hate narrative versus, like, my background in D&D was I loved high action so much that I didn't even know the fighting rules because we were so into high action that we were narrating the fights, right? But we really, like, our games were literally fight scene, fight scene, fight scene, fight scene, but we were also playing that very heavily story-driven with intense characters living out, like, teenage power fantasies. Because that's what we were, right? I mean, they were dumb stories, but we were avenging our characters' dead girlfriends, and it was intense for us, and we had a blast. And we very much were high roleplay, high action, high combat, high tactics. We tweaked out our characters and built overpowered machines and stuff, and that was what we played, and that's not wrong.
Now here's the thing: is that me and Grant have actually gone back and forth on this in the past.
What's OP?
We had some really nasty
knockdown dragouts. Yeah.
Did you guys use the third person while you were arguing?
No, because this was an out of character argument. Like, we didn't talk to each other for a week.
Players.
Yeah, like Puka had some real
joke.
fights. Oh, okay.
Yeah, where basically, and then this comes up with the idea of the rules thing is min-maxing or knowing the rules so well that you use them to get an advantage over the other players.
Yeah.
That is where it becomes OP.
Okay.
Now, Grant would argue that if he wanted to play a character that was a combat monkey, he's not invalid in that want.
Right.
And then I would argue that the game that he had joined frowned upon those kinds of characters, but was so vast and had so many kinds of characters that he was role-playing wrong.
Right.
I'm not saying I had the right idea.
Right, yeah,
that had that argument.
That was the argument we had. That was a ways back. Yeah.
Was that, like, I'm like, you're not actually playing the game, you're playing the stats.
Right.
Okay.
And that was a very big point of contention for a while. Now, if everybody at the table wants that,
wants to sit down and min-max a character.
Yeah. If everybody at the table wants to sit down and play Exalted and throw 30 D10 at each other.
Hell yeah. Sometimes literally at each other.
Shadowrun. I need 35 D6s, please.
And even then, like, I would approach that character differently now, because at the time, like, with what I now know, you know, and having grown since then as I have, I would say, like, in the environment we were in, and you saw this in Dusk, right? Where in order for your character to be the person who was really good at dodging stuff, you had to have an obscene dodge stat.
Oh God, yes.
Because comparatively to, because if you didn't have a stat that was comparatively higher than another PC's, then the moment you started playing a character whose theme was I move out of the way, right? The moment that was a thing, that it was supposed to be your character's shtick, somebody else with a higher dodge stat in the room, not even related to the play, would start shitting on your fun and raining on your parade about how more awesome they were than you. And that was a problem, and, like, at that time, in order for me to play the character who was fucking untouchable, in order to play that character who didn't have very much offensive ability, but was the stat in question. The stat in question.
You had to min-max better than the other guy.
I had to min-max better than the other guy to play a character who was going to be, you know, the king of their little department. And the stat in question was an AC of 85, an AC of 85 by 15th level, I think it was. And it was a really min-maxed character, and the whole point was, no, she's not going to take any damage. Not physically, anyways. That's not the, like, that was supposed to be part of her shtick. And that was what spawned the whole thing, because in that room, in order to be that untouchable character who was comparatively to everybody else, you know, so to prevent somebody else from dick-waving all over my roleplay, I had to have an AC of 85. And that's what caused a lot of tension.
And basically, the backlash came from, he's only making characters to be better than other players.
Right.
You know.
Either that, or if you sit down, especially if you sit down with, like, a newbie, or, you know, someone who hasn't played a ridiculous amount, and they might not know how to play as well as you. You may have played the most amazing rogue that has ever graced the goddamn earth. And this other character, this little guy, wants to play a rogue, and you're sitting there telling him what to do, and you're overriding how he wants to play his character because, you know, you're trying. Don't try to it's not necessarily that you shouldn't try to make your character OP. It's that maybe your character's not OP for a reason. Yeah, maybe it plays into
You
yeah.
should build your character for the game. I played Druid in 3.5. 3.5 Druid is my class, and anybody who knows anything about optimization in 3.5 will tell you that Druid is second only to Cleric in being ridiculous.
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing here is that, you know, early on, is just describe, oh, this is a D&D player coming over to World of Darkness, because it is a completely different world, because a lot of the World of Darkness game balance is in the fluff.
And playing that Druid, I had to pick up on, is this a group of ridiculous badasses with high stats? Because that tells me I can use my really awesome forms and badass spells and combine stuff well to be really good. Or, if I'm playing in a group that isn't, and what's going to happen is, like, I as the badass am going to come through and trivialize anything that challenges that party. Like, the GM either has to play out of my party's league to challenge me, or just let me waltz on stuff. Like, then I've caused a problem for the game. And again, that's working with the players and the GM and finding out what it is you're going to be doing.
It's an issue that I have with some characters in newer campaigns, because I know how to build my characters to be really, 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 really good, and everybody else is... They're not bad,
everybody else is playing 5 fighter, 5 sorcerer. Meanwhile, you're over here with your Abjurant champion.
I'm over
here
with my specialized friggin' monk that can do 4 attacks per turn. You know, like it's ridiculous. You know, try to gauge the level.
Well, yeah, power creep is also something. Like I'm gonna bring up Dusk, but Dusk was very flawed in the way that players had access to getting powerful very quickly. And once they had it, it wasn't like they were going to lose it. And so when new characters came in, especially with so many of the games being socially driven, the new character would come in, and the player would either have to, you know, spend their points very, very optimally, or not expect it.
And in the format that you're playing in Dusk, the problem was that, you don't have that problem at a table. There's 4 people at the table, and if somebody comes in 6 months into your game, the party is level 15.
Squeegee, poke at the talking stick.
Somebody new sits down at the table, right? And the party is level 15. Does the new guy make a level 1 character?
No.
Because in Dusk, you did.
You did, and I understand that.
Yeah. Because Dusk was a role-playing room, a chat room online, and to get to level 15, your character had to be in play for 6 months, right?
And I can understand that.
And there were 30 people playing, and anybody could join in and play at any time, and it was a different beast altogether.
It was so vast, and we assumed that there was also room for people to continue to make other level 1 characters, and some people did, and some people absolutely flat out refused to.
Really? You want to make a level 50 character? Do you know how bad your level 50 character is going to be because you weren't leveling it there? Like you don't know where you wanted to go? Like
but like I said, like because a lot of the games are so socially driven. Like Werewolf the Apocalypse has the whole cairn and the sept and all that. And it's just also so whenever a new character did come in, even if they got close to being anywhere near being able to handle another player's character, if they just wanted to be petty about it, all that character had to do was just be a dick socially and shut them down. It didn't matter what stat you had on the character sheet; they were untouchable.
Yeah.
And like that, that's actually one of the primary reasons I drifted away from the online room and started playing more on tables. Is that in an online room there are 30 motherfuckers, and I've only met 3 of them in real life. And by real life, I mean, like, outside of the room, outside. Like, I've seen their handle. I don't know those dickweeds from a hole in the wall. Why would I ever trust them to not shit on my fun? Why would I ever trust them to not get uppity and have an opinion about my character and my play and my story?
Oh, so just because you have an opinion, you're uppity. Okay.
Right.
But I think it plays into, like, does being good at the rules make your characters OP? No. I think if you actually understand the rules that well, then you can also show the restraint to make a character at the level of the people around you.
I also think, like, understanding the rules is not the flaw. Abusing them is the flaw.
Abusing them is the flaw.
Abusing the rules is not cool.
And
figuring out which combos are super OP. Oops.
Not to skip over a question, but Dirch did have a question while we were going that kind of touches on this too. How do you GM when half or more of your group min maxes, but you have a few that want the RP to be, or you want more RP skill around it?
Okay.
Tavern gladiator brawls.
You've got basically like you've got 4 players at your table, and maybe 2 or 3 are like, I really like my min max.
Yeah, I want to play a super powerful character.
It's like I want to.
How do I GM that? I talk to my players and I establish that min-maxing does not exclude roleplay, and roleplay does not have to exclude min-maxing.
Gladiator pit in the tavern.
I talk to the players because that is a scenario. The problem there is actually the assumption that roleplay and min-max don't mesh.
They totally do.
They don't even, like, it's not that there's no meshing or not meshing to happen. They don't touch each other. They're not the same thing, and they're definitely not exclusive to one another. If you are min-maxing but not role-playing, it's not because you're min-maxing. It's because you're not role-playing. You can min-max and role-play. You can role-play and min-max. You can not role-play and not min-max. You can not min-max and still role-play. But those two things are not influencing one another. And players
they're not exclusive.
Right. It's weird because that is actually a widespread belief. Is that if you are a min-maxer, you're not a good role-player.
Serranus,
burn down a tavern.
Sounds amazing, Serranus. But yeah, so like that's how I would GM that. I would say, look, guys, there's no reason that you min-maxers can't RP with the guy who wants to P, and look at the RP guy and be like, your RP shouldn't trump them wanting to min-max. Like, this is going to touch on something that we'll talk about in the metagaming show, but making suboptimal decisions does not mean your roleplay is better.
How do I? Oh man, I love. Here, hold on. I love using this episode of Firefly as an example. Shindig. Imagine Shindig as an RP, an entire tabletop event where Malcolm Reynolds gets his ass in trouble with a sword fighter, and he thinks he's a good fighter, but he's a fighter with guns, not swords.
Right.
He maxed all his gun stats out, and now he's in a duel where he has to fight with a what? What's a sword? Like, that's how you can kind of do that stuff. Where if you just look at Firefly as an entire tabletop role-playing experience, you will have such a fun time for the record. But yeah, like you can throw them into situations where they're min-maxing doesn't mean shit. Also, and they have to role-play their way out.
Dirch is talking about encounters now.
Okay.
Yeah, and
because if your party is split that way, then who are you balancing around? Are you balancing around the people that can throw 4 fireballs at once, or the guy that was like, I just want to throw fireballs, and he throws 1?
Okay, so here's how I handle that as a GM, personally. 2 things need to happen. 1, the players who are min-maxing and really like who first off, what is the majority of players? Do you have the one guy who's the odd man out and not min-maxing because he wants to roleplay? First off, I'm going to address that he can roleplay and min-max. But there's going to be some of this. Not some of this, and not some of this.
Yeah.
But some of this, because maintaining a balanced campaign is up to the GM to tailor and run.
Yeah, but it is the GM's job, and if you feel that it's a little bit out of me, you can ask your players, hey, would you mind? Don't be afraid of communicating, hey, I'm a little unsure about this. Do you mind? Don't necessarily put limits on them, but you
might also just teach the person that doesn't want to min-max how to min-max. I mean,
legit.
That's true.
He gets to
they
just
should
meet and have an optimal sheet. I actually like having suboptimal sheets too.
Yes, no, as an option,
but I understand that's a choice I make.
That's a choice you make, and it's a choice that, if you at my table, Pook, were like, okay, I understand this is not an optimal sheet, and this game is going to be balanced for optimal sheets. You're telling me that you are okay with your character being fragile, not being able to kill anything, and generally not contributing to the party in a direct combative way in a fight.
Well, we already know. My favorite trope is the hero.
Guess who's getting captured?
My favorite trope is the hero's journey. So yeah, I want my character to struggle through some things.
Yeah.
And I know you talked about how suboptimal choices aren't better role playing
inherently
in the metagame thing. But like seriously, sometimes I'm like, I want to play the kid. I want to play the one that the character that is probably not going to hold his own as well in a fight, but might surprise people every once in a while too.
And that
I want to play the character who's absolutely useless in combat, but throws salt everywhere while screaming for some reason.
Right, yeah, like that is a function of the players sitting around and talking and understanding what they want to get from the game and how to achieve it. So, like, honestly, talk to your players if you're running that game and communicate to them.
I think this works so much better to table than it does in online. I can actually sit here and bitch about an online text-based game. The reason this is a problem is because the power creep overall has to be managed. And this is not just for 4 characters. This is for 70 or 80 or 90 characters. Because players have multiple characters. And so when certain ones start to grow, you have to then say, how do I manage the room around it? The whole game.
And at a table, it's managing this one table and these 5 characters.
And so I think the reason in online play that min-maxing is so discouraged is because they don't want the entire game to have to advance to that point to keep up. Because if I let the level 50 in with in a room full of level 10s, I now either have to have the level 10s accept the fact that they're going to do worse, or have them find a way to level 50.
And it is like the ideal room, the ideal game is one where all the characters are equally capable of contributing, and a challenge to one will be a challenge to all and not trivial to some and overwhelming to others. That's for the GM's sake. And
by the way, online gaming is just suboptimal. Play these games at a table.
Like, yeah, no, like, legit. And, like...
No, I was also going to mention, like, legitimately, guidelines. What the book says is not law. If you notice 3 of your characters are absolutely fucking murdering shit and you got 6 characters in your party, who gives a shit what the HP is? 8 characters have to hit it. You know, like every character has to hit it before it dies.
I've done that. I've definitely done that as a GM, where like the guy came in
to make it so everybody
between his sheet, his stats, and his dice, he just couldn't do shit by comparison to everybody else. And you know what happened when he fucking rolled anything that looked decent as an attack roll? On occasion, he would just run the goblin through, and that was it.
And that was great. Yoo-hoo! Yay!
And, but in order to do that, you really have to be careful not to poop on the players' fun, where the players who are having fun optimizing around these expectations that these monsters will have that much health and so on. Like, you really can't, in that situation, you have to find players who will meet and work with each other on that topic of who's in it for what reason. Because if you just blow one person off for the next, like... Anything else, Coop?
Butts?
Anything else?
No. I've got 2 more questions though, and I'm also looking at like Buddy has a question as well when we get to it. But Pythagatron asked earlier. Let's see. I wonder if there's a form of tabletop where there is no OC at all. Everything that's happening has to be expressed in character, and it's the GM's responsibility to facilitate the technical issues with the characters on the side.
That's called LARPing.
Okay, I was about to ask, is that LARP? Because I've never LARPed.
That's called LARPing.
Live action roleplay. You hit it, like, you can use foam swords, you can use different stuff. I have a buddy of mine who LARPs, and he says
you can also literally play vampire, walking around with your character sheets in your pocket with real vampire fangs, and then having GMs marked by something, and they resolve conflicts, because I've never done this at all, she says. But no, there is a form like that.
Never playing a tabletop game, would streaming this be more of a benefit to plan out your characters to some degree compared to general tabletop with friends, even though you still want your friends to let... I have no idea what that question means, buddy. I'm sorry.
Hold on. Never playing a tabletop game, would streaming this be more of a benefit to plan out your characters? So I'm wondering if streaming character creation would be easier? I kind of tend to like to keep character creation one-on-one or with like a group.
So as far as I can tell, streaming the game versus streaming character creation depends on the show. Character creation for Darkness Rising happened off panel. Character creation for my Deadlands game will happen off panel. Character creation for Magic and Myth happened off panel, but that is because my goal with that is to actually create a television show out of our gameplay. And instead of just like streaming the gameplay, I'm looking to do something mildly different. I don't think streaming the character creation is like, if you want to stream it. If you don't. Like,
yeah, I'd imagine that'd be really cool if you wanted to. That's what I'm imagining that question means, but I could be interpreting it wrong, buddy. What's his name? Let us know if I'm interpreting that question wrong.
Yeah, like I'm like, if you're streaming it, are you looking for feedback from your audience, and really, are you making characters based on what your audience wants?
Yeah. You could do that. Just a whole bunch of Twitch plays D&D, ladies and gentlemen.
I want it known I am working on a show wherein the audience is the DM.
Is the DM, yeah.
It's a Microlight 20, which for those of you who are unfamiliar is a boiled down D20 system. Fantasy setting where for one episode the adventure goes on, and there's some of it is procedurally generated, right, so that we don't have to fumble through communicating stuff with the audience every week. But the audience gets to decide things like who the monsters attack or suggest what the plot twist is or whatever. And it's a bunch of us playing with with popular vote by the audience being the GM. Like I'm gonna be doing that.
Pirate Kitty said, let me ask you, what is your opinion of players taking on NPCs and converting them to PCs?
Faith.
Faith.
When I started running Darkness Rising, Faith was an NPC that was mentioned and mysteriously vanished. And she was somebody who knew all three of the other PCs, Levi, Jack, and Axel. When I started airing that show, I did not know that Plutofaerie was going to be playing. I actually had a different player lined up who no-showed and I never heard from again. And I went looking for other players, and it turned out I discovered that Plutofaerie was a big tabletop nerd, because I didn't know that before Darkness Rising, and we invited her in. She was kind enough to be the token girl who legitimized the show in the eyes of mass media. And she started playing a character, and then over the course of the show, that character died. And then she took over the role of Faith, because I introduced it as a possibility. So what do I think about...
I was given a selection of 3 PCs, I want to say. You actually... Or NPCs. You gave me 3 NPCs that I wanted to play?
I know one of them was Alicia.
Yeah.
One of them was Faith. Oh, and the other one was a Leafling.
Oh, that's right! The other one! And for the record, that was a close second. Ooh. So I have a question. Can you permit me? Because I may or may not have found one of my old...
Oh, I can do that.
Dark Elf. Yeah, I'm not a mod.
I'm faster than Pukajutsu.
Okay.
Here you go, guys. This was me back in my Dark Elf days, back in high school.
Wow.
This is LARPing.
Damn,
Tumblr
girl.
Tumblr hates you now.
ASL?
I know. I appropriated. It's okay.
You culturally appropriated Dark Elf.
But yeah, no, I think that, like, I have actually done a couple of things variant where a PC will play an NPC. And this is at the tabletop. I'm not going to talk about it in online format because it's a whole different beast, a whole different can of worms in the online room. At a tabletop, I have in multiple instances had NPCs like familiars or sires, mentors, allies, that kind of thing, played by a different player at the table. So, for instance, Faith has Saint and Sinner, her 2 guns. Let's say that in a fantasy world, Faith's guns are intelligent, and those guns have a personality. I hand the guns to Axel's character to play, so that Pith is playing the guns and Axel at the same time. Whether or not the guns become a PC once they were an NPC is just a matter of, like, is there a spot to fill? Do we want to do that? Like, I see absolutely no reason why any of that would be,
I'm distracting. Yeah,
I don't see like, any of that would be a problem. I think it's actually very simple to execute, and isn't like I don't understand why that would be a point of contention with anybody.
I think converting NPCs to PCs is probably an easier thing to do in an existing game, because there's already some kind of connection to the characters, even if they've just met in passing. So I think they're a good resource to pull on if you've got somebody that actually is interested in playing one of the NPCs if their character dies or something like that. As long as it's an NPC and not a powered character played by the GM that just happens to have the NPC label.
Right. That's a whole different beast entirely. Yeah.
Yeah, that one don't go handing off, like, the mayor of the city to somebody in your party.
Unless that's the...
I think the mayor questing with the party would be hilarious.
That would be, like, that could be great, but, like, if being the mayor makes you super overpowered by comparison to the rest of the players, like, obviously that's not going to work out. But yeah, like, there should be no... I don't see there should be, like, as long as you are sensible about it.
I was going to say, it's actually past 7.
Yeah, I was
running. Yeah, we're just going. We could just keep probably going for like another hour.
Like I wouldn't care if we did, but like that's why I'm asking. I'm trying to get through the questions that we had saved up through the show, so I get to those, and then
Yeah,
and then
well,
we'll
I think
call it
he's
there.
adding some on. Like this recent one was pretty recent, but
Was it?
no, the I had a thought. It's gone. I had a
Happens
thought.
to me all the
It's
time.
gone. I hate that shit.
I am a chronic thought loser.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I have a raid in 2 hours. Serranus has the raid in 1 hour. I got the raid in 2 hours.
You know what's funny is Serranus is supposed to talk to me after the show today. I got a date with Serranus after the show today.
Oh, don't make out too much.
I'll try not to. Sometimes I can't contain myself.
Yep. Yeah, that was me LARPing, by the way. I don't have any. That's my winter out. There was a summer outfit, and it was very inappropriate to show on the internet as I was a 16, 17-year-old. So inappropriate.
So who was that character that we're looking at in that picture, Plutofaerie?
That was Hikiru. I'm forgetting. It was T.S. Sundare? Sun something. She started off as a dark elf priest. She started off as a dark elf priestess, and there was an adventure where I was the only one that showed up for the LARPing. So I ended up getting. I started out good. This is actually my only evil character that you guys are about to see. She started off good, and she ended up turning on this solo adventure where she defeated a tower of a person who was summoning undead, and took the tower for herself. And started summoning, because she's a priestess, and started amassing an army of undead because at that point in time, she had befriended a paladin, and her party just didn't get it. They just didn't get how the world was supposed to work. And the world needs to be kept safe. And I need to have my undead tower full of people to keep things safe from my paladin and my party members, right? Right? So yeah, and she went off the deep end, and it turned out. No, the end of the story was the paladin stormed the fortress with the rest of her party members, and she was killed. She was killed by the rest of her party members.
Okay, so it is.
But yeah.
Were there any other questions that you had saved up, Pook? Because it is 7:11.
I don't know if Buddy actually clarified. I don't know if you guys caught that.
Oh, did he? What did he clarify? What did he say?
More details is like basically you have your 4 or 5 friends that stream with you on Saturdays. Would planning out how you want your players to be benefit your stream compared to just friends in real life?
I feel that talking to your friends and your players and your GM and discussing stuff with them can never, unless you, there is a point where you can talk it into the ground, obviously, but like up until that point, like planning things out and deciding what it is you want to do and how you want to do it, as long as you don't mistake the discussion for setting things in stone and you are willing to just see where things go as they happen, as long as that's still there, like you can never do your game harm by planning out. As a matter of fact, a lot of on a closing note, I personally feel that so many people play because they want good story. Okay. And good story comes with good structure.
Do you approach tabletop roleplay differently with people online than you do with people in person?
No, I approach a game I'm going to stream differently than a game I am not going to stream, because it has an additional set of qualifying, like a different set of criteria I need to meet for it to be a good game and a good show. But no, when I'm playing online, I handle my table exactly the same way as I would in person.
There you go, buddy. There you go.
That is how I handle it.
I would, yeah.
I personally, I have a couple of friends that I've role-played with a lot, so I already know what the expectations are with them, so maybe not so much planning. That's maybe another side of that same question. And maybe you know your real-life friends well enough to not have to do as much. But I think even with people you do know, if you're starting a new game, I think some talking should be done just to clear it up, even if it's the same things you've heard every time, just to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yep. Okay, so I am going to pass it off to Pook to do his shout-outs here.
Right now?
Yes, go.
Well, hello everybody. I am Pukajutsu, as you know.
Hello, Pukajutsu.
And this is my second AA meeting. No, and I am one of those newfangled Twitch streamers that happens to do this each and every day. Today was day 248 of consecutive daily streams.
Yep.
And we'll be celebrating 250 on Wednesday with a little, maybe something special. You'll have to come and check it out. It's at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Pukajutsu. But you can also find me on the internet, thankfully, in other places as Pukajutsu. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, probably checking out your mom's Snapchat, all those places as Pukajutsu. Come by, say hi. Me and the ponies, we're friendly people, and we welcome just about anybody except for that guy over there. You know who you are.
He's creepy. I understand. He's creepy.
Yeah. I am EvilSqueegee. This is currently airing on my channel. If you're watching this later, you're probably watching it on my YouTube channel. I do a lot of pen and paper tabletop role-playing content. We're expanding to even more of it. I'm looking to do some one-shots. We got a Deadlands show coming up. There is a series on YouTube for Mage the Awakening that I'm going to be running with Mr. M. Dubois as my co-player there, doing gameplay and tutorials and all kinds of stuff going on there. It's going to be pretty fucking hype. We play Darkness Rising on this channel. It's modern-day horror RPG. It's pretty fucking awesome. Plutofaerie plays in that game. And that is every Saturday here at 4 p.m. EST. And this is the Nerd Talk Show, which is the head of the Nerd Community Project, which you can catch at www.nerd-community.com. If you're interested in the tabletop pen and paper role-playing nerd stuff, go! Sign up, do the typing, make with the forums, meet some people, find folks that are interested in the stuff you're interested in, have some fun, look for a group, build a group, play some games, tell us all about them. It's pretty awesome. We can't wait to hear from you.
Link the nerd forums.
Link the nerd forums. Nerd forums. www.nerd-community.com. Boom! It's in the chat. Boom. It can't be undone. Oh no! And I am looking. You can catch this show here every other week, and I'm pretty certain next week we'll probably tackle that complicated, tumultuous topic of metagaming, and I'm not going to tell you who our super secret guest host for the show in 2 weeks is. This is a bi-weekly show. This is not next Monday, the Monday after that for now. And before we close off,
show it swings for every Monday.
Yeah, it swings for both Mondays. Before we close off the show here, I am going to pass off to the bi-weekly bi-sex joke goes here. Plutofaerie, take it away.
Did you just out me? No.
Ah!
Roll for durability damage on the closet.
Roll for sex. I'm Plutofaerie, everybody. I was your guest host for this podcast. And this bi-weekly podcast. I join EvilSqueegees on Saturdays from 4 to 7 right here for Darkness Rising. So if you actually want to see some of the stuff that we were talking about in action, please feel free to come by. As well, I stream Final Fantasy 14 over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Plutofaerie. And
she can be taught.
She can be taught. And yeah, other than that, I'm usually hanging around in these crazy bastards' channels. Raiden Pook's channel. EvilSqueegee usually raids mine. His ponies try to ride hard. The Pluto loves too much. But yeah, that's.
You hear that? You hear that? Squeegee has ponies too.
Squeegee has ponies too. Yay! Always roll for sex. Also, make sure to roll to kick in the nuts.
Bro. All right, guys.
Sex, maybe.
This has been
sex, if you're a praying mantis, maybe.
This has been Nerd Talk Show. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. I will see you guys tomorrow here on this channel at 8 o'clock in the morning. Adios, guys.
Bye,
bye.
faces.
Farewell and ride hard.
You guys, stop waving.